I was reborn back to 10 years ago, the day the apocalypse began. In the desolate ruins, the screams of zombies echoed, yet I seemed to have gotten used to it. I was about to grab the knife on me, but after searching for a while, I only found a sword that hadn't been sharpened. It looked somewhat familiar. Suddenly, there was a burst of gunfire from outside the window. I instinctively kicked open the car door. I turned around and hid behind cover. From the sound, it seems like an old-fashioned submachine gun. It immediately attracted the zombies nearby. They roared and ran toward the source of the sound. Then, there was a loud bang. The man loudly asked about the situation over there. The girl named Xia Ran had a serious expression. The crowd is evacuating. We need you to hold on a little longer. But we're running low on ammunition. Damn it, where did these monstrous creatures come from? Seeing this, I suddenly became curious. Why are they wearing military uniforms? And our weapons are severely outdated. This fighting style is completely wrong. It's only a matter of time before the entire army is wiped out. What should I do? Should I save them or not? What if there are advanced infected? Without weapons, I'll be at a disadvantage too. Soon, they'll run out of bullets. Fortunately, the civilians have been evacuated. Since we no longer have any worries about them, everyone decided to fight to the death, engaging in close-quarters combat with the zombies. They gave Xia Yu the chance to live, but they were vastly outnumbered. Unsurprisingly, all of my teammates died, but only one bullet remained for Xia Ran. A sudden, inexplicable fear surged within him. Facing the oncoming zombies, he aimed the gun at his head. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. But just then, a loud bang echoed from not far away. A long sword kept striking the hood of the car. It instantly attracted the zombies' attention. Xia Ran was surprised. Who was it? Where are they? Why haven't they evacuated yet? Soon, the horde of zombies ran towards the source of the sound. Before Xia Ran could even warn them, a sword flash passed by. He cut down all the zombies ahead. The moment he landed, the zombies behind him were also dismembered. Xia Ran watched this scene in shock. Countless sword flashes weaved through the zombie horde. Who is he? Even special forces could only handle at most 3. Yet he can deal with 50 at once. I glanced behind me. My eyes met the Genin's. It seems he's the only one left alive. My peripheral vision caught the short sword on the ground. I picked it up casually. Then I threw it forward. As it pierced the zombie's chest, I took a stride and stepped on the hilt. Leaping into the air, I caught the short sword. With a whoosh, a dense flurry of sword strikes sliced through all the zombies. How is this possible? After everything fell silent, I realized these zombies were incredibly weak, like they were only recently infected. I looked at Xia Ran, who stood there dumbfounded. I stepped forward and introduced myself as Wang Zhe from the World Evolvers Cooperation Organization. The rescue operation has been completed. Please provide information and any necessary assistance. What? Why should I assist you? I'm the military here, okay? Looking at Xia Ran's military ID. Hasn't this been abolished in early China? And with his old-fashioned guard uniform and the weak infected around him, I asked what year it was. Xia Ran hesitated for a moment. November 3, 2021. What's wrong? Hearing this, I was greatly shocked. I had actually returned to 10 years ago, the very day the apocalypse began. An alien object, known as the Destroyer, suddenly struck Earth. From then on, over 50% of the world's population was infected and turned into monsters. Fortunately, a new technology had landed on Earth. The crystal that can make humans evolve has been created, and I am one of the evolved. Unfortunately, it's only physical enhancement. Unlike other evolved beings who possess world-destroying powers. At this moment, I suddenly realized, I haven't been granted powers. Instead, I was brought back from the brink of death to 10 years ago. Isn't that my power? And I've been reborn with my future body. If that's the case, I must stop all of this. Just then, Xia Ran shouted, "Look over there." An aurora appeared in the sky. In the future, we call it the evolution zone. If I remember correctly, this should be one of the first evolution zones in the world. I didn't expect to see such a beautiful scene in this desolate apocalypse. The girl's name is Xia Ran. She is a sophomore at the National Defense Military Academy. I heard I'm also a sophomore. She looked at me in shock. With my skills, how could she just casually ask for my student ID? After all, an ordinary college student wouldn't carry a weapon. Therefore, Xia Ran concluded that I must be a high-ranking military official on a secret mission, who fabricated a false identity, but he was quickly proven wrong. Looking at the information on my student ID, he was speechless. But the priority is to leave first. Just as I was about to leave, Xia Ran behind and go on alone. He immediately put on a show, saying that as a member of the military, I have the duty to protect you, a civilian. Before he could finish, I had already closed the doors and windows. After a moment of thought, I quietly asked, "How do you drive this car?" As the scene shifts, we head toward the evolution zone. I didn't expect this military vehicle, which had been eliminated for years, to be so complicated in structure. Xia Ran originally thought he could feel proud for once, but after seeing my gaze, His face suddenly turned red. What are you looking at? Why were you staring at me? Until I told you to stop the car. And then got out. I leaned towards the window and said, get out. Let me drive. It turned out Xia Ran was being presumptuous. She had been staring at him just to learn how to drive. At this speed. At the current speed. I'm afraid we won't make it. Before Xia Ran could react, I slammed on the gas pedal. I started speeding. Even a 30-year veteran driver wouldn't dare drive like this. Did I really just learn to drive? As the car ran over one obstacle after another, I told Xia Ran to stay alert. The purification zone has been severely affected. The further in you go, the more dangerous the roads become. But why go to the purification zone? Is it because you have family there? Facing Xia Ran's question, I darkened my expression. I have no family. I realized I had asked the wrong question. Xia Ran quickly changed the subject. Actually, their mission was also to investigate there. But unexpectedly, they encountered infected people on the way. Then green aurora appeared in the sky. They didn't know that this was a sign of the evolution zone opening. I missed it in my last life. This time, I must get the crystal. I asked the country folk what time it was. Although there's no signal, the time is still accurate. It's already 1650, and hearing this, I immediately felt something was wrong. If I remember correctly, the entire plan is supposed to begin at 1700 hours. No one will be able to enter within a 10-kilometer radius. Looks like I'll have to change lanes. Xia Ran was feeling curious. I had already grabbed the steering wheel firmly. With a flick of the wrist, he swerved onto the overpass. Looking at the scene ahead, Xia Ran was stunned. Right in front of the car was a dense horde of zombies. Even if he tried to plow through them all, it would be too late. Xia Ran never expected that he would be using a turret-mounted machine gun. Under the hail of gunfire, the zombies were shattered one by one. Seeing this, Xia Ran couldn't help but exclaim, so strong. They actually exploded from the sheer willpower. Just then, I told Xia Ran to floor the gas pedal. Even if there's a curve ahead, don't turn the steering wheel. Trust what I say. This made Xia Ran suddenly become serious. He stepped on the gas pedal. Crush all the zombies in front of you. Then he rushed towards the guardrail without hesitation. Xia Ran closed her eyes in fear. As the countdown sounds, the time has come to 17 o'clock. Just hear a bang. A loud explosion echoed from above. Numerous green lights scattered everywhere. The car remained suspended in midair, motionless. Only after a while did it crash to the ground. I felt the golden quicksand beneath my feet. What's going on? Why has the city turned into a desert? Xia Ran suddenly turned around. I can't believe I saw the pyramids and the Sphinx. Then a voice entered everyone's mind. The first evolution zone has generated, reading the Egyptian crystal. The Guardian has generated the liberation condition. Absorb the evolution crystal. Hearing these familiar rules, I told Xia Ran, this is a trial ground that can help humans evolve. There are only 3 ways to leave. First, defeat the Guardian. Second, a certain number of humans must enter within 5 meters of the crystal. Third, the number of survivors reaches the crystal's required amount. Meeting any one of these conditions will grant freedom. Otherwise, no one can leave. And as the first generation evolver, I'm sure to become the focus in this apocalypse. Passers-by who don't understand the situation wouldn't think so. At that moment, a bus out of control sped toward them. It passed by them directly. Then there was a crack. A zombie shattered the glass of the driver's cabin. The driver slammed the gas pedal, but the bus speeding down the highway couldn't stop in time. He directly rushed towards the shortcut. As expected, no one can get out of here. Soon, cries for help came from the car. A glance from him. I immediately understood. But as we passed the Sphinx, it seemed to be watching everything. Clearly, the driver was dead. A roar broke the silence. A female zombie slowly walked into the carriage. A girl named Yuching was pushed out. Country bumpkin, hurry up. If it weren't for you getting us on the train, this wouldn't have happened. As they spoke, the female zombie lunged. They were in chaos. Luckily, Yuching blocked his mouth with an iron rod. Come help me. Only by pushing him away can we escape through the car door. Just as both sides were in a standoff, Huang Mao suddenly noticed another zombie had arrived at the door. He shouted, hold on, you guys. I'm leaving first. He pushed the zombie away, and ran toward the car without looking back. He was getting further and further away. The female zombie also broke free from the restraints. Surrounded by 2 zombies now, it was over. In a moment of crisis, suddenly there was a loud bang. A figure smashed the car window. Just as the zombie was about to bite Yuching, a sword pierced its head. Then, the sword was slowly pulled out. Yuching was stunned for a moment. Then her heart leaped into her throat. That female zombie suddenly appeared, about to bite me. I sidestepped to avoid it. Then I grabbed my long sword. All I heard was the sound of swishing. A flash of white sword light passed by. Only the head remained on the ground, muttering. It was clear that Yuching was impressed by my skill. At the moment when we made eye contact, her little face couldn't help but turn red. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Yuching was about to introduce herself, but Xia Ran, arriving just then, interrupted her. Wangzhe, are you done? He warned the girls that it was dangerous here. You should come with me quickly. But the girls said that someone was still missing. Hearing this, he had a bad feeling. Bad luck. At this moment, the blonde guy kept running forward. Suddenly, a shadow appeared in the sky. He looked up. It turned out to be an incredibly huge foot. Everyone was terrified. A sphinx. Xiang Juan moved. He lifted the bus. His expression was quite strange. Suddenly, a roar erupted. It was so loud it hurt my eardrums. It looked like he was about to crush us. I calmly said, everyone, don't panic. Sit tight, take out a book and open it. Xia Ran was a little curious. But there was no time to explain now. The next moment, a sharp claw pierced through the bottom of the car. Then, it tore open a large crack. The guardian suddenly looked into the car. These people were actually quietly reading a book. At this moment, to the bystanders, it seemed like everyone in the car was doomed. Little did they know, I was reminiscing about high school history. In a moment, the car smoothly landed. We watched the monster slowly leave. Everyone was shocked. Why didn't you kill them? At that moment, I closed my book, and told everyone it was safe. They finally breathed a sigh of relief. So, what exactly happened? Why didn't the monsters attack us? In response to the servant's question, this is simple. The survival tip is to understand the nature of the god. In other words, the god refers to the guardian sphinx. According to the myth, he gives a riddle to anyone he encounters. If they can't answer, he will eat them. Until a wise person provided the answer. Only then did the sphinx shamefully fall off the cliff. Therefore, the true nature of the gods is to respect and fear those with knowledge. Upon realizing this, I suddenly understood. Even if I am not here, they might still survive. Because this girl is none other than one of the only first-generation evolvers in the world, Sui Yuqing. She holds the title of Storm Queen. The ability to cause disasters and alter the climate. He became an important leader of future China. And now I have the same opportunity as he did. We stared at each other for a while. Xia Ranqing cleared her throat. Since we have a way to deal with the Sphinx, doesn't that mean we can't lose? I shook my head. The real killing is yet to come. It's getting late. We can't stay here. The blood in the car will attract more zombies. And since a while ago, quite a few people have been eyeing us. It seems they have some ideas about us. After all, getting out of here. It's not necessary to kill the Guardians. Killing a certain number of people can also complete the mission. So, the people here are not simple. You must be prepared to kill. In the apocalypse, humans are far more dangerous than the zombies. We left the car. We moved on. The wind and sand at night can interfere with the zombies' hearing. The small supermarket at the end of the street is our destination. It has enough supplies to last us for a while. Along the way, Xia Ran kept bragging about my glorious achievements. Soon, we arrived in front of the supermarket, but I stopped in my tracks. Because there wasn't a single zombie in sight. For safety's sake, I told them to stay where they were. At this moment, a monster with an alien appearance was already lurking in the shadows, eager to strike. Stop hiding, come out. As soon as I finished speaking, it suddenly burst out of the ground. It lifted the wrecked car high above its head. The two of them were startled. They quickly drew their guns and told me to run. But I'm not the least bit afraid. Don't waste your bullets. They're useless against him. Having said that, the zombie suddenly threw itself at me. Although I ducked to avoid it, the loud noise quickly attracted other zombies. With a roar, could this guy be a mutated one? As I was thinking, a zombie lunged at me. It slammed down on me. I let out a startled cry. Luckily, I was unharmed. I even defiantly shook my hand. The zombie was completely enraged. It lunged at me again. It was easily dodged. It's very hard to accept. If this blow hits me, I'm definitely not going to survive. But why am I not fighting back? Just as Xia Ran was puzzled, I realized there was no foothold around me. And the zombie seized the opportunity, and lunged at me. He extends his sharp claws. It seems like I'm about to lose my life here. My gaze shifts. I hear a crisp snap. The zombie's arm is severed with one strike. In that case, why didn't you act sooner? And the zombie still hasn't fallen. He still had the presence of mind to see it. Feeling the pain from the severed arm, the zombie went into a rage again. Just as it got close to me, I took my stance. A quick katana slash, swift as lightning. Before the zombie could react, its head was instantly shattered. With a thud, the battle is over. The two of them were stunned. It was a one-hit kill. But just then, suddenly something started to gather towards my body. Not only was my stamina fully restored, my strength also increased. At this rate, you'll grow from D rank to C rank within a year. As for why I didn't take action earlier, I motioned for a few people to look at the corpse behind us. Although Xia Ran comes from the military, she's still somewhat afraid. And Yuqing, in order to adapt quickly to him, has been pretending to stay calm. Truly worthy of being a future leader. I grabbed his hand. I said, don't worry, I'll watch with you. I even found a third person to come and watch. This outer layer on the corpse's surface is an exoskeleton. In just one day, its internal body structure has changed. And listening to this sound, Its hardness is already similar to metal. Therefore, bullets are completely useless against it. Only by avoiding the exoskeleton and hitting the joint areas accurately will it work. It seems this information must be reported to headquarters as soon as possible. Previously, it was still alive on this battlefield, but now it's dead. Ordinary infected will soon gather. With a change of scene, we found 50 candles. We started preparing dinner. And we should start with the food that expires soonest. After saying that, the genin intended to stir-fry a few dishes. Unexpectedly, he was also from the mess hall. In no time, a sumptuous dinner was ready. It looked quite appealing. After taking a small bite, I was instantly stunned. What's wrong? Don't you like it? I didn't expect this familiar flavor to be the 13 spice mix. In the future, this will be a luxury more precious than gold. I haven't had this taste in 10 years. Seeing me eat only vegetables and not meat, Xia Ran was somewhat puzzled. Little did she know that after the apocalypse and the reduction of land, fresh vegetables are simply unavailable. We can only rely on pills to absorb vitamins. But from Xia Ran's perspective, not only did I protect them, now I'm pretending to eat vegetables. Thinking of this, he felt particularly moved. He watched Xia Ran cry while eating. Qing thought, is the food really that delicious? As dinner ended, I handed them my remaining blanket. I thought I'd just doze off in the corner. But the two girls proactively suggested they wanted to sleep with me to better understand why I'm so strong. I've been reborn, back to 10 years ago. I've gained another chance to evolve. I'm venturing into the evolution zone with my girl. And now, I need to educate them about the apocalypse. There are currently 5 types of infected. They are wandering, mutated, fear, disaster, and calamity classes. There are also rare, specially evolved species. Wandering class infected are the most numerous. They are the infected individuals who show no changes in the early stages, but over time, they begin to mutate. Their strength and speed also increase. And that big guy is a rare type that only appears in the desert. Fortunately, humans can also evolve. I'm sure you've already noticed that after this whole day, not only are we not tired, on the contrary, I felt full of energy. This shows that the crystallization of evolution is influencing us. So, I decided to take advantage of this, to train them on how to fight against the infected. Soon, the practical combat began. Facing this zombie in front of me, I stabbed it straight in the head. With the zombie's complete death, the energy begins to gather in my body. At this moment, I notice 2 infected people walking towards me. It's time to deal with them. Seeing Yuqing lower her head in fear, I decide to help this female high school student become the future leader of China. Under my comforting words, Yuqing blushes. She wants to stay by my side in the future. She also made up her mind. Just then, the zombies rushed forward. Xia Ran first used her knife to block them, then grabbed its wrist and threw it down hard, pressing it to the ground, and forcefully stabbed it in the back of the head. Seeing that it was no longer moving, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yuqing faced a zombie for the first time. He nervously dodged to the side. Then, seizing an opening, his expression changed. He used the stick to fiercely jab at the zombie's chin. Then, with a forceful push, he directly pierced the zombie's head. He kept panting heavily. It seems he's still shaken by the sound of my voice. Only then did he relax. After all, yesterday he was just an ordinary person, and today he has to face ruthless slaughter. I patted his head. You've done really well. But remember, in the apocalypse, you can't easily pity others, especially not the infected. As the sky gradually brightens, we arrive at an abandoned building. We need to help them quickly adapt to the survival ways of the apocalypse. Xia Ran looks towards the distance. It's the bus we were on earlier. It's been completely burned down. It seems someone's after us. And in the direction I'm pointing, a group of people have already begun to fight over it. Soon, the sun slowly rose. The pyramid was dazzling in the sunlight. Suddenly, my chest felt warm. The evolution crystal is resonating. Just then, a group of young men sped along the road. Watching the petrified monster, they kept rushing forward, saying they would dominate once they got the crystal. The event unfolded as he drove and leaped high. Suddenly his eyes filled with fear. He looked closely. It turned out to be a pair of large hands that suddenly appeared, and slammed him to death in the palm. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. The monster actually had 2. It is said that the Sphinx is the craftiest god of Egypt, and it treated humans as toys. It deceived everyone's eyes. Facing a hail of bullets was like scratching an itch for him, until someone threw a grenade, destroying his handsome face. Only then did he become angry. He roared at humanity, having tasted success. The man continued his furious bombardment, just as he thought he had succeeded. Little did they know, the guardian shook his face, and instantly returned to his original form. No one expected that he was actually immortal, and it was already too late to escape. The guardian mocked and toyed with the ants. What should we do now? Xia Ran was about to ask me, but then she realized I had already vanished without a trace. In the blink of an eye, we were already in the desert, speeding wildly towards the direction of their escape. Below the pyramids, A small hill caught my attention. See how I suddenly stopped the car? The Guardian was stunned. Then I said provocatively, "Big guy, come and get me." The Guardian, instantly enraged and ashamed, spread his wings, and fiercely lunged at me. Seeing this, everyone thought I had gone mad, as its enormous claws were about to strike. I gripped my long sword, and using its momentum, leaped into the air the instant the attack fell. Then I quickly sped through the gap. But the Guardian wasn't idle. A golden light shone from his mouth. Then the sand began to rapidly coalesce. In an instant, it transformed into the shape of a lion. They charged towards me en masse. I didn't expect the Guardian could summon them, and their speed was no less than my motorcycle. Since that's the case, I suddenly hit the brakes. Everyone thought I had given up the struggle, but little did they know, I turned and charged towards them. At the moment of impact, I gripped my long sword. The next second, my hand swung down. The lions were all severed. I didn't expect I could use this trick in the car. At that moment, the pyramid emitted a golden light. Then, a roar followed. It immediately sent a shock through my heart. It felt as though a pair of eyes could see right through my body. By the time I regained my senses, the Guardian had already caught up, and it's even faster than before. I picked up the explosives on the ground. Everyone thought I was making a futile struggle, but as the fuse was lit, the Guardian smiled wickedly. He looked in the direction the explosives were thrown. He was instantly dumbfounded. Then there was a huge bang. The mountain ridge unexpectedly revealed a subway entrance. As everyone looked on in surprise, I twisted the throttle, and leaped into the air. I turned back and said goodbye. The big cat then drove toward the subway entrance. Seeing that I was temporarily safe, Xiaoran suggested we quickly evacuate, because their location has been discovered, and the other side has guns. It seems they want to involve me, to help them steal the crystals. To avoid burdening me, the two decided to evacuate quickly. Meanwhile, on the other side, the man hurriedly said, "I found the people from the bus yesterday, to threaten me into getting the crystal. They plan to capture Xiaoran and the other person." Meanwhile, the two are running quickly. After all, in the apocalypse, humans are more dangerous than zombies. But soon they stopped, because a strange aura emanated from the gate ahead. I've been reborn 10 years ago. I thought I could regain the purification ability, but I didn't expect the Guardian to have become stronger. The difficulty is nothing like the early purification zones. How did Yuching manage to reach the purification crystal back then? Could the problem be with me? Ever since absorbing the zombie crystal, the Guardian now sees me as a zombie. That's why another Guardian targeting zombies appeared. It's that guy with the elbow. The top priority is to get out of the subway, but I never expected there to be a palace here, and a large group of zombies. This is getting interesting. Meanwhile, on the other side, the leader orders his men to capture the woman. The creepy underlings rush in, but the next second, 2 gunshots interrupted their path. Xiaoran exposed her identity, making them stop the pursuit. But what does it matter to the military district? In their eyes, they're just 2 women toying with them. So under the cover of gunfire, they began to chase them relentlessly, until they were driven into a dead end. Even the bullets had run out. The leader smirked wickedly. He walked toward the 2 with malicious intent. It's over now. Suddenly, the sound of an engine was heard. A figure sped by overhead. It charged straight into the thugs. In their surprised eyes, I slowly emerged from the corner. "Look, that's the guy who stood up to the monster." Watching me enter uninvited, the leader asked in a deep voice, "Kid, you're quite skilled. I admire that. I'll give you a chance to cooperate obediently. Otherwise, don't blame me for the gun in my hand not having eyes." But I couldn't help but sneer. "You're not worthy. It's because of people like you that humanity can't unite after the disaster. The more chaotic the world, the greater the harm of evil people." After saying that, I clenched my fist. "Keeping you here will only lead to humanity's extinction." My eyes turned bloodshot. I stopped wasting time talking to him. Instead, I disappeared on the spot. Before they could react, a red lightning bolt flashed across the necks of several of them. Only his terrified gaze remained. The leader panicked, and quickly shouted for indiscriminate gunfire. He didn't care about the lives of his subordinates at all. And every time I blink, I take down one person. At this rate, I'll kill them all sooner or later. Xiaoran and the others finally breathed a sigh of relief. But the next second, a large hand suddenly reached out towards them. It seemed like they were about to be taken as hostages by the leader. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. The bullet pierced through the leader's chest. By the time he reacted, he was already lying on the ground. Only then did his subordinates realize that their guns had disappeared. My head exploded the next second. I scoffed. "You think I only know how to fight with a sword? I can do more than that. This guy's still not dead. He even said he'd personally flip a coin to decide our fate. That's quite interesting." The leader thought his plan had succeeded, but I blew his head off with one shot. We'll talk about it in the next life. After all, the zombies will soon adapt to the daytime light. Meanwhile, on the other side, a massacre officially begins. The apocalyptic zombies attack. Humanity fights back through evolved abilities. And as a reborn one, I've discovered clues to the original evolution zone. Using a red drink as a metaphor for the Guardian, besides his enormous size, he also possesses immortality. But to obtain the evolutionary crystal inside the pyramid, one must defeat the Guardians. The real key lies in the Sphinx. The reason they were injured earlier was because they are like containers. Without being damaged, they can exchange with each other. In other words, to deal with the Guardian, we must destroy the Sphinx simultaneously, and the time interval can't be too long. This is undoubtedly a challenge for Xiaoran and the others. And inside the pyramid, there's a monster even more terrifying than the Guardian. If no one gets the crystal before time runs out, it will come out and slaughter with the Guardian, until the required number of people is met. Upon hearing this, the two fell into deep thought. After all, they still didn't know that there were only 3 evolution crystals in this evolution zone, which means if they can't get one, they will die. And I had prepared myself to go it alone. Fortunately, the two quickly pulled themselves together. I made up my mind to prepare for battle, and not long ago, I tested the crystal's ability. My supernatural power used to only enhance my body, but after absorbing the zombie's energy, a blood-red crystal formed within me. By consuming it, I can greatly enhance myself. I even considered detonating it for super enhancement. But to face the Guardian, I need more crimson crystals to stand a chance. I must fill it within 3 days. So I quickly threw myself into battle, while also collecting weapons for them, and finalized the next plan. This made Xiaoran suspicious of my identity. Why do I know so much? Seeing me remain silent, he gave an awkward smile. No matter what the outcome is, it doesn't matter. He will trust me. He wants me to promise to leave together. But can I really do it? On the other side, a group of people is gathering supplies. I suddenly noticed someone rushing by. It seemed to be heading towards the direction of the pyramid. Right in front of me stood the gigantic Guardian. After he saw me, without saying a word, he summoned the little lion again. With the sword drawn, wherever I went, the monster was torn to pieces. Taking advantage of the thick fog, I threw out the detonator. With a bang, it exploded right in the Guardian's face. Everyone thought I was wasting explosives. After all, it had no effect on the Guardian. But the next second, more and more detonators were launched, triggering an explosion. It instantly engulfed his head. Little did they know, my real target was actually the Sphinx behind him. By the time the Guardian reacted, it was already too late. The sound of the explosion roared. Seeing this situation, he flew into a rage. He slammed his foot onto the ground. The surroundings immediately shook violently. The next second, a sharp spike suddenly rose from the ground. It pierced straight through the motorcycle. I dodged. I drew my long sword. I charged straight towards the Guardian. As the knife fell, I struck at his body with my sword. Immediately, a painful wail erupted. I watched as blood covered his face. Sure enough, the container was damaged. Life had been exposed. The next second, the Guardian was furious. It looked like he was about to strike. I took out my handgun. I just sprayed a bunch of shots at his face. At this moment, there were 20 seconds left until the Sphinx's restoration. Since that's the case, I'll have some fun with him. What is it like to face the Sphinx in a one-on-one fight? I was about to win for sure. Suddenly, a golden light lit up from the pyramid. The next moment, my body suddenly stiffened. The long sword couldn't penetrate at all. I turned around. The statue behind me had already restored itself. It seems that it's those eyes causing trouble again. In that case, I changed my gaze. The blood-red crystal inside me ignited. The Guardian's injuries quickly healed. He let out a roar. A terrifying pressure instantly locked onto me. The next second, he opened his mouth wide. He lunged at me. I told Yuching to act immediately. He pressed the remote. The drone, which had been prepared earlier, took off instantly. I threw the explosives at the Sphinx. There was a huge boom. Direct hit. I taunted the Guardian, saying, "You're angry, aren't you? Let's see how you'll switch your true form now." As soon as I finished speaking, several flashes of swords and blades passed by. My guess was indeed correct. As long as I keep his true form in sight, killing him is only a matter of time. But with the enhancement of the pyramid, the Guardian's abilities have also been boosted. But that's fine. Let him witness the culmination of human wisdom. After all, my goal from the beginning was never to kill him. But instead, he lured him here. The ground suddenly shook violently the next second. It's time. A subway train suddenly emerged from beneath their feet. Before the Guardian could react, the subway train crashed directly into his head. The immense impact force left the Guardian no chance to dodge. With a loud boom, instantly killed. This is the power of steel civilization. But a large number of zombies rushed up from the subway entrance. They crawled over the bodies of the Guardians. At this moment, the sky changed. The monsters inside the pyramid are about to move. Xiaoran immediately mounted the motorcycle. I sped towards the top of the pyramid with Yuching. While that guy's attention was on the zombies, I quickly climbed the pyramid, but they soon caught up. Suddenly, I noticed a door had appeared in the stone steps beside me. I looked closely, and it was a figure completely clad in black. Could he be the second guardian? At that moment, a sharp pain suddenly struck my chest. The power of the blood-colored crystals within me was instantly suppressed. My body couldn't move at all. But thinking of the few people who were terrified, I gritted my teeth. I must get the purification crystal today. As more and more zombies climbed up, they all walked through the gate. Suddenly, with a whoosh, they were instantly sucked in. Could it be that the guardian is absorbing power? As I got closer, my body began to shake uncontrollably. It felt like something was calling to me. I looked closely, and my eyes had turned golden. This man was once Hajin Slender Tiger, a notorious figure in the martial arts world. Now he's fallen to becoming the owner of a dilapidated video store. His name is Li Yan. As a young man, he sought out renowned martial arts masters across the land. He carved out a fearsome reputation in the martial arts world. But a month ago, he was diagnosed with acute leukemia. Now he can only spend his final days in this rundown little shop. At this moment, a young woman walks in from outside. She softly asked, "Are you Mr. Li Yan?" Li Yan gently looked up at the woman. He indicated that he was Li Yan. Receiving confirmation, the woman began to introduce herself. The girl's name is Lei Jing. She is a council member of the China Wushu Association, and her grandfather, Lei Hongsheng, is nominally Li Yan's master. According to seniority, Li Yan should be his senior brother. Because of his grandfather's passing, he wanted to ask Li Yan to return to Guangdong with him this time, to serve as a consultant for the Martial Arts Association. But Li Yan directly refused his request, and told Lei Jing that he had been diagnosed with leukemia and didn't have much time left. He was afraid he wouldn't be able to help him. Facing Li Yan's attitude, Lei Jing, though a little displeased, said nothing. She took out a business card and gently placed it on the table. She softly said, "My grandfather once said, for martial artists, a restless heart is key. 3 parts resentment. And among so many younger generations, only senior brother, you, have cultivated that 3 parts resentment. No matter what decision brother sure makes in the end, I hope that the anger in him hasn't dissipated." After speaking, she turned and left with the driver. The anger? Looking at the red stain on her hand, Li Yan smiled self-mockingly. At this moment, she had no mood to continue working. She was about to close the door. Suddenly, a hand blocked the roller shutter. A horribly disfigured face appeared in front of Li Yan. Li Yan's pupils suddenly contracted. It was actually the driver who had just left. With a fierce whip kick, he charged at Li Yan. Li Yan raised her arm to block. The tremendous force sent Li Yan flying. Li Yan was secretly shocked. This guy is definitely not human. Before Li Yan could get up, the monster attacked again with a kick. Li Yan immediately punched the monster's joint. She shattered the joint. The monster, losing its balance, knelt before Li Yan. Their eyes met. The atmosphere was extremely eerie. Li Yan reached out and directly grabbed the monster's shoulder. He spun around suddenly. He slammed the monster down to the ground. There was a loud crack. Li Yan forcefully snapped the monster's right arm. Seeing that the monster didn't react for a while, Li Yan let out a sigh of relief. He turned around to look for his phone. Unexpectedly, the monster suddenly picked him up, opening its mouth wide to bite Li Yan. Sensing the killing intent from behind, Li Yan twisted his waist, leaned back, and delivered a flying kick. The tremendous force caused the monster's head to twist several times, before it fell to the ground, motionless. Suddenly, Li Yan felt a wave of dizziness, and passed out. When Li Yan woke up again, a short, fat man appeared before him. The monster from before had vanished. They say the Li family of Hajin are masters of both spear and sword, but I didn't expect their grappling skills to be so sharp. Li Yan suddenly noticed that behind the fat man, it was pitch black, without a single light. It was eerily strange. The fat man glanced at him and asked, "What about the woman?" He noticed Li Yan's somewhat unfriendly look. The fat man insisted he had no connection with those 2 people. The creature just borrowed that man's thought to greet you. It was just an introduction. You can call me Wang Yang, or you can call me by another name, Mo. Li Yan gave him a glance. A faint smile, magic. Would you like some dumplings? Wang Yang was momentarily stunned. Then he burst into laughter. This guy is really interesting. His expression then turned serious. He looked at Li Yan and said, "I can save your life. But it's not the bone marrow matching you were thinking of. That's child's play. I can offer you something much better." Li Yan believed there's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything that happened today felt strangely unsettling. After a moment's thought, he asked directly, "What do you need me to do?" Wang Yang spread his hands, saying simply, "Try it and you'll know. But there's no turning back." Li Yan smiled faintly. "Sounds a lot better than waiting to die. Let's hear it then." The fat man grinned. His face turned unusually dark and solemn. "Then let's begin." Suddenly, a wave of abyssal black surged out from behind the fat man. Li Yan, who was severely injured, was completely swallowed up. A mysterious and ethereal voice echoed, "Welcome to the bat world of Yen. How powerful is this man? He is terminally ill. Yet he can still shatter the knee of the Thai boxing champion." Just now, Li Yan was swallowed by the black wave behind the fat man. In that moment, Li Yan felt himself falling endlessly. Various bizarre scenes appeared before me. Black iron chains stretched across the sky. An ancient and mysterious palace. Countless powerful and mysterious figures. Fiery red blood enveloped Li Yan's body. Li Yan saw everything before him turn red. At this moment, he finally saw one of the mysterious shadows clearly. Its whole body was chained. The wings behind him were pierced by iron chains. His head was drenched in blood. At this moment, the strange sound echoed again. It woke my heart. Li Yan couldn't make a sound. He kept asking in his mind, "Who are you?" The cold darkness once again swallowed Li Yan. He opened his eyes. What came into view was a boxing ring. The surrounding cacophony of shouts and the pungent smell still left him slightly dazed. This is an underground black market boxing match. Where's that fat guy? Suddenly, a voice rang out, "Walking adult. Welcome to Yenfu. We thought you were ready for a new identity. One that won't arouse anyone's suspicion. Go ahead and make a big mess." Meanwhile, Li Yan's pupils displayed a task box. Looking at the dialogue box, Li Yan carefully analyzed it. It seemed he was currently in Kowloon Walled City, Hong Kong, in 1986. To complete the mission, there were 3 requirements. First, reach the 7th level at Kowloon Spring Stage. Second, obtain any fragment of the ancient novel Go Chen Lu. The third, awakening of the enchanting bird from the ancient novel in Guchen. As long as any one condition is met, the Salt Talisman event will officially begin. And the longest time I can stay here is only 1 month. Also, I must not lose the game. If I lose the game, I will return to the original world directly. A gift from MO. Did that fat guy give me the purchase privilege? Talent inspiration 81%. Looks like this. There's still room for improvement. While Li Yan was thinking, a figure appeared behind him. They raised their hand and struck at him. Li Yan swiftly grabbed their fist. He turned around and looked. It's a middle-aged man in a suit. The middle-aged man stared at Li Yan. He was grumbling and urging Li Yan to get on stage and box. Li Yan didn't say anything. She was still thinking. If that fat man really can get me to Hong Kong in 1986, there's no reason he can't cure my illness. Let's see what happens first. At this moment, the host on stage is still enthusiastically promoting the boxer about to step up. The boxer's name is Chache. He is trained by the boxing champion known as the Comet of Tainan, Nafo. Suddenly, the arena erupts with a roar like a tsunami. A dark-skinned, muscular man steps onto the ring. It is the boxer Chache. Suddenly, it seems that Chache feels the gaze of Li Yan. He points directly at Li Yan, choosing her to come up on stage. Li Yan walked slowly towards the ring. She noticed that faint red light was emanating from Chache's body. Chache looked at Li Yan, his face showing signs of insufficient vitality. Well, it's the first match. Just find a soft target and hit a few times. The real show begins later. The match begins. Chache suddenly charged forward. He immediately starts with a westward charge. Li Yan quickly retreats. Then, Chai Kai follows up with a quick and fierce straight punch. Li Yan takes a small step to dodge the attack. He raises his left hand. He deflects Chai Kai's right punch. His right hand moves directly toward Chai Kai's throat. Chai Kai didn't expect Li Yan to be so fast. Instinctively, she dodged. Li Yan swiftly moved through Chai Kai's right arm. He immediately circled behind her. He kicked fiercely at the back of her knee. A sharp pain surged. Chai Kai's legs gave way. She collapsed directly onto the ring. And in the front row of the stands, a man wearing a floral shirt muttered to himself, "It's Baghuazhang, Zai Su has passed." At this moment, Chai Kai also unsteadily stood up. Li Yan dashed forward in a quick step. He threw a straight punch at Chai Kai's face. Chai Kai cautiously protected his face. He blocked the punch. Li Yan's right leg kicked fiercely. It struck towards Chai Kai. Chai Kai could only endure the excruciating pain, crashing into the wall to block. A loud cracking sound was heard. Chai Kai's knee was shattered by Li Yan's harsh kick. This man is a once-in-a-century martial arts prodigy. A month ago, he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. In order to seek a cure, he was led into the Yenfu world by his guide, and entered the Yenfu world. The first opponent faced is the Thai boxing champion. Just now, Li Yan's strike directly shattered Chache's knee. Chache collapsed to the ground, crying out in pain. The audience who had bet also began cursing angrily. Li Yan coldly looked at the referee and said, "Announce it." The host stared woodenly at the tea and dishes on the floor. He composed himself. Only then did he announce Li Yan's victory. But Li Yan showed no intention of leaving the stage. He softly asked, "Isn't this a competition to clear all levels? Who's next? Who's next?" Suddenly, laughter erupted. It came from the man in the stands who had earlier seen through Li Yan's strategy. The boxing ring in the young man's Dragon City only opens if there are bets. If no one places a bet, you'll just have to get off the stage. Do you have the guts to fight my men? Win or lose, this 50,000 is yours. He then pulled out a thick wad of cash from his bosom. Li Yan looked at the man, wearing a floral shirt, with the collar open, revealing the tattoo of a yiksha on the chest. Considering the prices of the 1980s, 50,000 should be a huge amount of money. You can only stay for a month. No matter how much money, it can't be taken with you. Just as I was about to refuse, a prompt suddenly appeared in the vision. A 50,000 yuan valuable item can be exchanged for 5 points of extension. Such items must be exchanged only after confirming their ownership. After seeing the prompt, Li Yan immediately changed his mind. He promised to participate in the competition himself. The purpose here is to treat the illness. This yanfuting should be useful. The middle-aged man who had made things difficult for Li Yan earlier came over with a flattering expression and said to the person, Brother Joe, if you're happy and want to bet on boxing, you can choose any fighter here. But having your person get on the stage is against the rules. Brother Joe suddenly laughed. Fatty, are you out of your mind? I paid 50,000 yuan for the Flower Mountain wine, not to watch those trash fight. The committee has made it clear, which rule says outsiders can't get on the stage? Before the fatty could say anything, Hua Shanjiu kicked the fatty out with one blow. The fatty had no choice. He could only tell Li Yan that the inner person was the one in charge of Liansheng. Make it look good. Take a few punches. If you lie on the ground, you'll get 50,000. Li Yan gave a knowing look. He wiped his nose with his hand. More blood flowed from his nose. Li Yan wasn't in good shape at this time. His body was feverish, bleeding, and inflamed. But feeling the impact of the fight just now, those punches landing with such force, it proved he was still alive. Meanwhile, Hua Shanjiu looked at the young man beside him and smiled. Xiao Zhou, I know you can't wait. Go on, have some fun. He knows that Xiao Zhou isn't someone who's just learned a few years of superficial martial arts. He's been practicing for over 10 years. He's more than capable of opening a school and taking on students. It's just that Xiao Zhou, in his early years, sparred with a Baguazhang martial artist of the Cheng style. He had 5 ribs broken, and he lost hearing in his right ear. Since then, for all these years, he's been hoping to have another match with a Baguazhang successor. To avenge himself, Xiao Zhou stood up, and jumped directly from the stands onto the ring. He cupped his hands towards Li Yan, and softly said, Du Jiachuan, Zhou Weitao is awake. Li Yan furrowed his brows slightly. His physical discomfort caused cold sweat to bead on his forehead. He gently said, He Jian. Li Yan looked at Li Yan's attitude. A trace of anger flashed in Xiao Zhou's eyes. He suddenly lunged forward. His elbow struck directly at Li Yan's chest. At the same time, his right leg kicked out to attack Li Yan's abdomen. Li Yan reacted extremely quickly. His left arm blocked the elbow strike. His right hand followed through, grabbing Xiao Zhou's right leg. He retracted his elbow strike instantly. His right fist shot straight for Li Yan's face. The fierce wind from the punch ruffled Li Yan's hair. Li Yan quickly blocked the attack with a palm strike. His body retreated using the force of the impact. He was secretly surprised. This Du family boxing style is quite interesting. He's truly a master. It seems I underestimated this fortified village. After the two separated, Xiao Zhou stared at Li Yan coldly, and slowly said, You're quite arrogant. Li Yan smiled slightly, and softly said, I just didn't expect a small-time thug making a quick buck to actually be a master of Du family boxing. I'm going to get serious now. Then Li Yan moved like a ghost. Step forward. In an instant, he was right in front of Zhou Tao. Stop. The sudden shout immediately drew everyone's attention. Li Yan quickly took a few steps back. A red-haired young man in a leather jacket, accompanied by a group of followers, slowly walked over. Hua Shan, with his wine shoes resting on the seat, coldly stared at the red-haired young man and said, Red Ghost, how did you get here? Li Yan has finally found a way to cure his terminal illness, but the price is that he needs to earn 3 million within a month. Just now, Hong Gui's words stopped Li Yan from competing with Zhou Weitao. Regarding Hong Gui's actions, Hua Shanjiu was somewhat displeased. His expression also turned dark. He pushed his glasses and said, What's going on? Are the 5 elders of your committee going to tear their faces off with us? Are we not even allowed to test our skills with Liansheng Dao Longqing anymore? The young man called Red Ghost lightly lit a cigarette, took a puff, and said, The grudge between Liansheng and Mr. Wu has nothing to do with us. We're just here to make a living by working with Ta Sui's horse on the boxing ring. But you treat my boxing ring like a chicken farm. Come up if you want to. Go down if you want to. This would break the rules. Hua Shanjiu smiled faintly. He glanced at Li Yan. He spoke softly, Then I'll speak directly. My little Zhou has always wanted to find a Baguazhang master to partner with. I, Hua Shanjiu, don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to break the rules of Longqing. Just do me a favor. Let them have a fight. Red Ghost took a deep drag from his cigarette. He slowly shook his head. Rules are rules. I won't interfere with anything else. But today, your people are stepping onto the stage. That means you're causing trouble in Longqing. Hua Shanzhou's expression was frighteningly cold. He didn't speak. No one knew what he was thinking. Xiao Zhou, listening to the two of them, knew in his heart that if he didn't do something now, today's events would be difficult to resolve. He leaped. Jump off the ring. He said to the red ghost, is it true that, as long as I follow the rules and get on the ring to fight, I will be able to fight him? The red ghost lowered his eyelids, and looked at Xiao Zhou, and smiled, saying, then you have to start from the first level. As long as the committee recognizes that your achievements are close enough, someone else is placing a bet. Then there's no problem. Xiao Zhou smiled faintly. He called out to Hua Shanzhou, Jiu Gu. Hua Shanzhou understood Xiao Zhou's meaning immediately. He replied casually, do as you wish. Then he left with a group of his underlings. Xiao Zhou walked up to Li Yan. He cupped his hands. He said, Master Li, there aren't many who practice traditional martial arts in Longcheng's ring. Today wasn't satisfying. Once I've established myself in Longcheng's ring, we'll have a proper match. Li Yan nodded. He spoke, that Master Zhou. Does your brother Zhou's offer of 50,000 yuan still stand? Xiao Zhou froze for a moment. He nodded awkwardly. Meanwhile, Li Yan saw a long-awaited task box appear in his eyes. After receiving 5 extension points, he finally unlocked additional purchase permissions. A glimpse showed he could obtain others' personal information. There is a certain chance of detecting its weaknesses. Each use consumes 1 point of vitality. You can also permanently purchase it for 10 vitality points. When seeing the 2 items below, Li Yan's eyes flashed with urgency. ES Hematopoietic Cell Enhancer. ES Hematopoietic Cell Ammonia Supplement. It seems this is the thing that Fat Man promised would cure his illness. One requires 10 points to be able to control their condition. Another requires 300 points to cure their illness. A purchase permission granted by MO. Each delayed service event can only be activated once. It disappears after 3 times. And I don't have that much time to wait for 3 delayed service events. I have to accumulate enough Yenfu points here. In other words, I have to earn enough money. Night falls on Longcheng, a city of dazzling lights and vibrant nightlife. Gangs are everywhere. The air is thick with decadence. On the rooftop at this moment, Honggui is telling Li Yan about the story of Longcheng. Longcheng is a notoriously lawless city. Countless fugitives escape here every year. Some become thugs. Others become boxers. Here, the committee is supreme. And Taisui is an executive member of the executive committee. He boxes here. He's basically just scraping by under Taisui's wing. Taisui is the mastermind behind all the boxing businesses in Longcheng. Just follow Taisui closely. Qian has everything a woman could want. However, Li Yan wasn't concerned with those things. Right now, what he needed most was money. He asked Honggui about the prize money for the fight. And Honggui's answer made Li Yan realize that getting 300 yen food ding within a month wouldn't be easy. A nauseating smell wafted from the dark alley. While looking for a dormitory, Li Yan encountered a girl of 13 or 14. Little girl, do you know where room 413 is? In response to Li Yan's question, the little girl's eyes showed a hint of caution and fear. But she still led Li Yan to the place. To show her gratitude, Li Yan casually handed the little girl a milk candy. Just as the little girl hesitated whether to take it, a woman's voice suddenly came from the room next door. The little girl hurriedly said goodbye to Li Yan, and ran back home. Li Yan opened the door, and lay down directly on the bed. She recalled the events of the day, and slowly fell asleep. In the middle of the night, in a gambling den, a middle-aged man, red-eyed from losing, took a box out of his pocket. How much do you think this is worth? The wooden box opens. Inside is a piece of pale yellow xian paper. It depicts a lifelike Kuei ox. It turns out to be a fragment of the Gaochen manuscript. Can you believe it? The male lead was actually chosen by this seductive, enchanting, and voluptuous rich woman. Just now, Li Yan's palm slashed downward, and struck her opponent's head. She then followed up with a punch that sent him flying, knocking him unconscious. This was already the 5th fighter she had defeated today. It's become very clear. Li Yan is not at the level of Class 4. It's already hard to keep her in Class 4. The red ghost leans against the edge of the ring, and waves his hand, signaling for Li Yan to step down. He says, if you keep fighting like this, even an idiot wouldn't continue fighting you. Come with me, it's your last match today. We're going to the big factory to fight. After saying that, the red ghost throws away his cigarette butt, and takes Li Yan to the service building. The Fui building is located on Longjin Road. It is a rather majestic dark blue-black building. Those who come to the Fui building to see the spring are either rich or influential. It costs at least 1 or 200,000 for a night. But to establish yourself here, you must find a major financial backer to support the scene. Soon, Honggui took Li Yan into a luxurious private room. Upon entering, they saw a woman in her 30s lazily sitting on the sofa. The big wavy curls, long legs and a slim waist, enchanting phoenix eyes, red lips slightly curled, endless charm and allure. Upon seeing Red Ghost enter, the woman spoke in an unhappy tone. Red Ghost, your dead ghost finally dares to show up. Do you know I've come to Longcheng? Are you deliberately avoiding me? This woman is called Zhu Di. Her husband was a magistrate during his lifetime. His net worth exceeded billions. Since her husband's death, Zhu Di has become obsessed with violence and bloodshed. She has now become the major sponsor of the Longcheng arena. The Red Ghost immediately put on an innocent look. He explained that he had gone to find a new recruit for him. He then hurriedly pulled Li Yan over. Li Yan forced a smile. He greeted him. Zhu Di looked Li Yan up and down. He whispered, "He looks pretty good. Just don't know if he's all show. Don't get up on stage and get knocked down after 1 or 2 rounds. I will lose face. Why don't you fight instead, Ah Hong? I'll support you no matter how much it costs, sister." Before Hong Gui could speak, Li Yan directly laughed and said, "Sister Zhu Di, you're joking. Hong Gui is my boss. If I let the boss personally step in and fight, then I might as well jump into the sea." Hearing Li Yan say this, Zhu Di smiled sweetly. She stood up directly from the sofa, leaning forward, almost pressing against Li Yan's body. She whispered, "If you can endure it, I will take good care of you." Li Yan's temples throbbed faintly. However, he still wore a smile on his face. It was impossible to tell. Then, the Red Ghost pulled Li Yan towards the ring. Along the way, he couldn't resist mocking him. He said, "Zhu Dajie sure smells fragrant. If you latch onto his thigh, you'll definitely rise to fame." Li Yan knew, as long as we win today, we'll secure our position in 6th place. We must show our strength. Only then will I have a chance to earn 3 million from this woman worth billions. Standing in the ring, Li Yan looked at her final opponent of the day, her face pale. She was wearing training gear, cold and emotionless. This man's name is Cheng Hunam. He's a wanted serial killer from Japan, proficient in daggers and firearms. He possesses skillful Okinawan Goju-ryu karate, and tonight, before Li Yan, he has already won 3 matches in a row. His 3 opponents are either severely injured or dead. As the white towel hit the ground, Li Yan immediately rushed forward. Her right hand swept out like lightning, striking Cheng Hunan's arm, which he used to block. Her left palm struck toward Cheng Hunan's neck. Cheng Hunan sidestepped and dodged. He twisted his waist, and his left arm collided directly with Li Yan's. He extends his right hand forward. He directly grabs Li Yan's right shoulder. Zhu Di is intently watching Li Yan on the ring. Anan is sweating for him. He knows that the opponents who were previously grabbed by Cheng Hunan on the shoulder were all defeated by his joint lock. This is the crucial moment for victory or defeat. The moment he grabs Li Yan's arm, a slight smile played on Cheng Hunam's lips. Unexpectedly, Li Yan's right leg suddenly flew up. He kicked Cheng Hunam hard in the jaw with his raised leg. The kick sent Cheng Hunam's head snapping back. His right hand immediately released Li Yan's arm. The Red Devils in the audience saw Li Yan's performance. They muttered, "This kid's ruthless. I heard he spent quite a few years in Guangdong." It seems that the understanding of Southern martial arts is no weaker than that of his peers, the Southern Fist Masters. At this moment, Li Yan's eyes flashed with a golden light. He seized Cheng Hunan's wrist with a firm grip. He said, "The blending of softness and hardness has been passed down from the Southern Fist's white crane style. Today, I'll let you pay respects to the ancestral master." Li Yan's finger mimicked a bird's beak, with his left hand's 3 fingers brought together. He thrust it like an iron spike toward Cheng Hunan's armpit. Cheng Hunan didn't retreat. He endured the intense pain and lunged into Li Yan's arms. He opened his mouth to bite Li Yan's ear. Before Cheng Hunan got close, Li Yan's right elbow had already viciously struck Cheng Hunan's face. Immediately afterward, Li Yan's hands moved like swords, his fists raining down like a storm, relentlessly pounding Cheng Hunan's body. Li Yan's fists slowly stopped. Cheng Hunao fell heavily to the ground. He lay still. A roar of screams and shouts erupted from the audience. The spectators in the stands went wild. They clamorously demanded that Li Yan fight again. Meanwhile, in the VIP box, Zhu Di, watching Li Yan, had a flushed face. He was drenched in sweat. His eyes were filled with a dazed expression. This might be the weakest gang I've ever seen. They actually pissed themselves from just one move by Li Yan. Just now, Li Yan easily defeated Cheng Hunan in the ring. Then he went to the bathroom. Li Yan calmed himself down. This was the first time in his life he had killed someone. For someone like Cheng Hunam, he has no compassion. He understands this isn't a place for mercy. There are no ravines under the tiger's eyes, only obstacles before a raised army. He silently repeated these 2 sentences several times, secretly making up his mind. Since he's come here, the 3 million ancient novel, Gochen Lu, might still have other versions. It must all be kept in my own hands. He arrived at the break room. Li Yan noticed that everyone inside was emitting a red glow. This should be the special ability of the Yen talisman. Anyone who holds hostility towards him will emit red light. The greater the threat, the deeper the color. Upon seeing Li Yan's arrival, Hong Gui pulled out a stack of cash and stuffed it into Li Yan's hands. He told him it was from Zhu Di. He told him to buy a better suit, to accompany Zhu Di tomorrow, and instructed Li Yan to open a bank account. to deposit the prize money from the tournament. After attending to these small matters, he took Li Yan out for a late-night snack. Through these days of contact, Li Yan also feels that this young man named Hong Gui is much more personable than he initially thought. The two didn't go to a fancy place, but instead came to a hotpot stall in a narrow alley. After a few drinks, the two were chatting happily when the sound of shouting and cursing caught Li Yan's attention. A young man with a nose ring pointed at his wet pants crotch. He was angrily scolding a 13 or 14-year-old girl, and the girl kept apologizing non-stop. At this moment, Li Yan also recognized the girl. She was the neighbor, a Xiao, who had guided her earlier. The man with the nose ring waved his hand. A Xiao instinctively dodged. This made the man even angrier. He slapped a Xiao hard across the face. A Xiao's eyes brimmed with tears from the pain. Her whole body trembled uncontrollably. Just as the man raised his hand again, his wrist suddenly shot with a sharp pain. Then, a size 42 footprint landed on his face. The immense force sent him flying backward. Li Yan stood smiling in front of A Xiao. He softly said, "It's just water. Let me apologize on behalf of my little sister, is that okay?" At this moment, a dozen or so young men holding machetes suddenly stood up around Li Yan. Each of them was glaring fiercely at Li Yan. At this time, the man with the nose ring also stood up. He took a machete from one of his subordinates. Pointing at Li Yan, he said harshly, "You dare to hit someone from Yishanchang? Do you really like to act like a hero? If you're so capable, why don't you try to chop me to death?" Before the man with the nose ring could finish speaking, Li Yan swiftly raised his hand and knocked the knife away. He caught the cleaver and swung it fiercely at the man with the nose ring. The sound of the blade slicing through fabric caused the man with the nose ring to instantly collapse. He slumped to the ground. A warm liquid flowed from his crotch. At this moment, Hong Gui also looked over. His face dark, he said, "Triad gangsters. So scary. Are you going to kill someone?" The man with the nose ring saw. It was actually Hong Gui. He was so scared, he broke out in a cold sweat. Trembling, he said, "Brother Hong Gui, you're here too." Hong Gui said while eating, "I come to this restaurant often. It's not easy for the little sister to work. The debt is owed and not compensated. The table and chairs are cleared, let's go." When the nose ring man heard this, it was as if he had been granted a pardon. He immediately went to apologize to a Xiao with a smiling face. After speaking, he quickly left the hotpot stall with his group of underlings. The two continued eating for a while. Before leaving, Hong Gui handed Li Yan a mobile phone, and told Li Yan to dress up nicely tomorrow. Wait for her call and go see Zhu Di. After they parted, Li Yan waited until Axia finished work, and sent her home. Back home, Li Yan was now in such pain that she was breaking out in a cold sweat. This deep, bone-chilling pain made Li Yan seem somewhat frantic. Another wave of intense pain struck. Li Yan could no longer bear it. He collapsed straight to the ground. He lost consciousness. They say when fellow villagers meet, they stab each other in the back. That saying really isn't wrong. Just now, the intense bone pain caused Li Yan to pass out. It lasted for a long time. Li Yan slowly woke up. The bone pain gradually faded. He hurriedly took some painkillers. He secretly thought that the pain in his rib cage had started when he got scared. He had drunk some alcohol with the Red Ghost. The aftermath was even worse. He had over 30,000 on him, plus the 50,000 he won from the whole competition. "I already have 13 points, I've got enough to redeem something. Looks like I need to redeem the leaf cell enhancer first. Otherwise, I'll have a medical emergency in the ring. That would be a problem. And I still haven't found a single clue about the ancient novel, Gochen Lu Ben." Lying in bed, I thought about the current situation. Gradually, I drifted off to sleep. Night fell. Li Yan, who had spent the day on a date with Zhu Di, got off the bus. Kowloon walled city remained as cramped and dark as ever. She was used to seeing violence on the streets. Li Yan just wanted to go home and rest. The stage allowed no room for sentiment. While walking through the alley, a hurried figure bumped straight into Li Yan. Li Yan instinctively grabbed the person's wrist. Unexpectedly, the person reacted the same way. He gripped his own wrist. Li Yan was secretly startled. This was an army's arrest technique. Both of them released their hands simultaneously. They stepped back. The man was in his 30s, wearing worn-out suit. He had neat, short hair. He still has a noticeable scar on his cheek. The man greeted Li Yan with a simple, good-natured smile. Through their conversation, it was learned that the man's name was He Anong. He and Li Yan were considered to be half-countrymen. He came to Hong Kong with a few brothers to see if there were any opportunities to make money. Xiangtan Zhenghuan Vision. Li Yan's phone suddenly rang. It was Red Ghost making the call. He warned Li Yan. There was a group of robbers hiding in the apartment building he was staying at. The police had already been notified. He told Li Yan to be careful, and to avoid going out if possible. Upon hearing this, Li Yan quickly hung up the phone, laughing and telling He Anong that the friend had drunk too much. But He Anong, who was beside him, had already heard everything clearly. At that moment, a Xiao, who had been looking for the cat, appeared in front of the two. Upon seeing a show's appearance, Li Yan was startled. He quickly crouched down and asked a show, "Do you have any change on you? Will you go buy a bag of candy for Gijien?" Axia nodded obediently. Holding the cat, she ran to the street corner. Watching Axia leave, Li Yan slowly turned around. Unbeknownst to him, Yanong stood behind him with a grim expression. A dark gun barrel was pressed against Li Yan's head. "Forgive me, brother. I don't want him either." Li Yan pressed his lips together without speaking. Yanong held the gun steadily. It was clear that he had undergone long-term training. At this moment, a red light flickered in Li Yan's eyes. A fleeting glance. The target has been locked. Yanong wins. The following information was obtained. Xinglin Yanong is exhausted. Light injuries, 39% proficiency in firearm specialization. Well-trained in skills. Overall combat quality improvement. Threat level, deep red. Although with the system's assistance, Li Yan hasn't done much. He knew that if he made any sudden move, Yanong would not hesitate to pull the trigger. And his skills in Bagua Palm, Minghe Fist, and his 81% proficiency in nursing were all useless in the face of firearms. They were all nonsense when facing firearms. Then Yanong pushed Li Yan through several turns and brought him to an inconspicuous small clinic. As soon as they entered, Yanong ordered his subordinate to tie Li Yan's hands with a rope. Li Yan thought to himself, Yanong is really careful when doing things. When the doctor inside saw Yanong bring another person in, he started complaining. Yanong smiled and promised he would leave extra money. The doctor immediately changed his attitude, saying that everyone is a friend, and should help each other. But just as he turned around, he just bit the dust in the northwest. This man is incredibly badass. He actually took down 4 hardened criminals single-handedly while trapped. Just now, Yanong guessed that the police could find them so quickly. Because the doctor was the most suspicious, he made a decisive decision and sent the doctor away without hesitation. He told his brothers to move immediately. Li Yan thought to himself, Anton is quite a character. He's ruthless and decisive. If we don't leave now, once we're blocked in, we won't be able to escape. A middle-aged man named Gao Cheng pointed at the young man lying on the bed and asked, "What about Xiao Jin?" Anton quickly walked over, grabbed Xiao Jin's hand, and told him that in Hong Kong, pirates won't be sentenced to death. "I hope Xiao Jin stays for treatment. After things calm down, I will personally break him out of jail." Xiao Jin's mouth fell open. His face grew paler and paler. He couldn't believe this was his most trusted older brother. At that moment, a man nearby shouted, "No, you entrusted your life to him, and this is how you treat your own brother?" He pulled out a gun and aimed it at Yanong. Yanong raised his hand and pressed the gun to his forehead. They began to argue. The man was furious. He kicked the suitcase on the table to the ground. He yelled angrily, "You can steal a life, but you can't spend it. What's the use?" Stacks of brand new Hong Kong dollars scattered on the ground, and 2 yellowed sheets of rice paper fell to the ground with them. Li Yan looked at the situation. He knew his chance had come. He smoothly picked up the scalpel from the tray, and with a backhand movement, held Gao Cheng. He directly plunged the scalpel into his neck. I pointed my knife at Yanong and said. He immediately backed off for his life. At this point, no one was arguing anymore. Everyone aimed their guns at Li Yan. The situation froze. After a long while, Yanong, who was still concerned about our brotherhood, finally relented and said, "Fellow villager, today, I admit defeat. I'll count to 3. We'll both throw down our guns. How about you release the person?" Li Yan agreed without hesitation, but his eyes were fixed on Yanong. He closely watched his every move. 1, 2, 3. As Yanong's voice fell, he threw the handgun forward. Li Yan immediately drew the scalpel. Gao Cheng's eyes had already lost their luster. Blood gushed from his neck like a fountain. Yanong crouched and rolled forward. In a flash, he picked up the handgun. He raised his hand and aimed. The movement was seamless. Just as Yanong went to get the gun, Li Yan swiftly turned his wrist, cutting the rope. He picked up a broken scalpel that had been stepped on and threw it at Yanong. The blade plunged directly into his palm. Yanong cried out in pain, dropping the gun. Li Yan powerfully kicked off the ground and charged forward. The knee directly struck Yanong's throat, sending his entire body flying out. As soon as he hit the ground, he made another tiger-like leap toward another armed man. That man lowered his awareness and fired. With a flash of brilliance, Li Yan barely managed to dodge the bullet. He waved his hand and gestured. The man directly took the lunchbox. At this moment, Yanong watched his companion being killed. His eyes bloodshot. Enduring the pain in his body, he wanted to pick up the pistol that had fallen nearby. Li Yan, without a second thought, picked up the scalpel from the table and prepared to finish off Yanong. Suddenly, Li Yan felt that her legs were uneven. On the bed, Xiao Jin was actually hugging her legs with both hands. She was trying to buy time for Yanong to escape. Li Yan turned around and waved her hand. The reverse grip of the scalpel stabbed into Xiao Jin's temple. Xiao Jin's death bought Yanong precious time. At this moment, he had successfully obtained the pistol on the floor. Li Yan leaped into action. The scalpel plunged down. He and Dong raised his arm. The black gun barrel pointed at Li Yan. A gunshot rang out. The whole room fell silent. A system voice sounded in Li Yan's mind. The fleeting glance state will last for 9 minutes and 43 seconds. No target weaknesses were perceived. Consume 5 points of extension to the target's lock. Target is dead. Can you believe it? Such a delicate and beautiful woman. Her hobbies are so peculiar. Just now, Li Yan took down 4 thugs in just a few minutes. She arrived at Longqing police station. Li Yan, who had just finished her statement, sat on a bench in the hallway, processing the information she had just learned. It turned out that she had robbed a bank with Anton's group, and stolen a batch of antiques. The fragments were supposed to have 5 pieces, meant for auction. Unexpectedly, by a twist of fate, she had somehow managed to get 2 pieces of the fragments, which should have had no lead. Would the remaining 3 pieces have been sold off by them? And she had accidentally ended up with 2 pieces. The extension event has officially begun. According to the system's mission prompt, the most important part of this event is to awaken the lingering soul of the bewitching bird. If the mission fails, the points and purchasing privileges gained from this task will be erased. The more fragments you collect, the greater your rewards will be at the end of the event. Fortunately, if the fragments appear within 5 kilometers, the system will issue an alert. Otherwise, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. It seems I need to look for other avenues. Leaving the police station, I met the Red Devil waiting for me. Troublemaker Red Devil. It was Taisui who gave the word. Otherwise, how could you have gotten out so quickly? Zhu Di paid your bail. He's waiting for you outside. You should thank him properly. Seeing Li Yan's unwilling expression, Hong Gui quickly added, that person is worth billions. Has long legs, a big chest, and a pretty face. And she's throwing herself at you, and you still don't want it? Thus, Zhu Di linked arms with Li Yan. Like a couple, went shopping. Night. Inside a high-class restaurant, Li Yan and Zhu Di sat opposite each other. Zhu Di looked at the suit he personally chose for Li Yan with a satisfied expression, but Li Yan felt heartache. The price of this suit was comparable to the cost of leaf cell enhancement injections. Looking at Zhu Di's handsome face, Li Yan softly asked Zhu Di about me. How much do you know about me? I can understand that someone would pay to get a boxer into the ring, but I don't quite understand why a woman would invite a man who just killed 4 people to dinner. Zhu Di didn't answer Li Yan's question. He asked Li Yan, when Hong Gui introduced me. He probably said something like a big shot from Rongcheng, right? What did you think when you saw me? Li Yan slowly lit a cigarette and said, at that time, I thought, this woman is worth hundreds of millions. If I'm desperate, I'll just kidnap her. Just extort some money, enough to live on for the rest of my life. Zhu Di's expression faltered. He looked at Li Yan with a dazed expression, and smiled faintly, although it's a bit harsh. But I like honest people. If you really kidnapped me, and it was as simple as wanting money. She lifted her high heels, and hooked them around Li Yan's trouser leg. Zhu Di tilted her head, her face drawn and tired, staring at Li Yan in a daze. She continued, speaking of bloodlust and violence. Some people are terrified or even repulsed by these things. But there are also those who are deeply fascinated by them. And I belong to the latter group. She finished, a rosy blush on her face. She curled her finger at Li Yan, leaning forward. Her eyes, shyly, met Li Yan's. She lightly licked her lips. A fragrant breath was blown onto Li Yan's face. She softly said, that day, when I first saw you boxing, I was incredibly excited. Li Yan uncontrollably swallowed. She subconsciously leaned back. This woman, she's really something else. With just a few words, she flustered herself, losing composure. Zhu Di noticed this. He smiled foolishly. The banquet ended. Li Yan walked alone down a dark alley. Suddenly, a searing pain struck his chest. The system prompt read, reading the novel, the remaining pages of the Go Chen Lu manuscript. The location has been reported. Please pay attention to the reception. A 3D map suddenly appeared before me. It was the full geographical layout of Kowloon Walled City. The target was only 100 meters away. Li Yan tightly focused on the target and sprinted toward it. He passed through 7 or 8 alleys. The system voice sounded again, reporting completion. Duration, 1 minute. Although I didn't catch up with them, at least it's confirmed that there are still 2 shards in the fortress. Can you believe it? This sunny, gentle neighbor girl turns out to be the mastermind behind the Longqing Mountain Gang. At this moment, Li Yan was holding 2 shards in his hand, muttering to himself, the bewitched bird. Qi Gongshi and that fat man who calls himself Mo. These should all be gods, demons, and heretics from Chinese mythology, right? Could they all be real? If not, then the fat guy really did bring me to this Kowloon Walled City, and that fleeting glimpse was indeed quite magical. And that voice calling itself Yanfu Xingzu, what exactly is Yanfu? And the person holding the shard, whenever I get close, they move away. When I ignore them, they quietly come closer. It seems like the person with the shard is also aware of my presence. If that's the case, I'm not the only one walking in this world of eternal life. The other party is being so cautious. Looks like it's not easy to deal with. I estimate they could become someone who walks with extended life. Seems like they're no pushovers. There aren't many points left right now. I can only buy the ES hematopoietic cell enhancer for now, to avoid getting sick during the whole event. That would be troublesome. I directly spent 10 extended life points to buy the ES hematopoietic cell enhancer. This stuff takes effect immediately. Soon, Li Yan felt her eyelids growing heavy. She slowly drifted into a deep sleep. The next day, when Li Yan opened her eyes again, she could feel a refreshing, invigorating sensation with every breath. Her body was free from any pain or discomfort. It was as if she had completely recovered. Li Yan stood up. Both palms, one facing forward and the other facing backward. The feet are moved, one placed and one locked. Suddenly, force is exerted. The inner diameter shifts. The fist's wind is like a dragon. The powerful force strikes the wall, causing a huge noise. And just at this moment, inside a high-class private room in the Puyi building, Hong Gui holds a stack of documents. He examines them carefully, and asks the middle-aged man opposite him. Su Tianxi actually had Tai Sui specially go see him. What's his background? The middle-aged man's name is Liao Xizong. He's the #1 boxing match agent in Kowloon Walled City. Looking at the documents on the table, Liao Xizong whispered, Tai Sui specifically went to see him, mainly because of his grandfather, Su Shangtian. Su Shangtian was a direct disciple of Yip Man, one of the 4 heavenly kings of Wing Chun, who had a 32-fight winning streak in the Kowloon Walled City's boxing ring. He fought so well that no one in Kowloon Walled City dared to challenge him anymore. The underground boxing ring in the building. Li Yan sat in the stands, watching carefully below. The pen fight. On the field were Xiao Zhou and a Vietnamese veteran. The weapons for the duel. The veteran held 2 triangular military daggers, while Xiao Zhou had a team of jihu. In terms of weaponry, Xiao Zhou's paper tiger is at a disadvantage, but from the current situation, Xiao Zhou still has the upper hand. Just as Li Yan was getting absorbed in watching, a long, fair hand patted Li Yan on the shoulder. Mind if I sit next to you? Li Yan looked up and saw a woman in sportswear. Her features were delicate. Her eyes and brows were long and graceful. Her long single ponytail reached down to her waist. Li Yan smiled slightly at the woman, showing no discomfort. The woman lazily stretched her body. Her long legs had no excess fat. Her perfect figure was clearly visible. The woman sat beside Li Yan. She took a small porcelain bottle out of her pocket, and drank it in one gulp. The strong aroma of liquor wafted out. Li Yan was also stunned. He smiled and said, "Not many women like to drink white liquor. Can't quit the bad habit." The woman calmly watched the two on the arena. She slowly spoke, her hands holding the power of the sage's end. These illegal moves are actually a mix of Cicada Dragon Crying Eyes Wen Shengquan from Taiji Manhwa Mantis, and Changqiao Dama Mantis Boxing. It's unbelievable that he could blend the two to this extent. He's truly mastered it. This kid is quite the genius. Let me explain. Xiao Zhou's self-proclaimed Du Family Boxing is one of the 4 famous boxing styles of Shandong. It's also known as Wen Shengquan. So the woman said that Wen Shengquan is Du Family Boxing. At this point, Xiao Zhou has firmly gained the upper hand. He steps forward with his right foot. He strikes with his knee at the opponent's knee joint. The veteran loses his balance. He reveals an opening. Xiao Zhou delivers a powerful punch. He sends his opponent flying. This secured victory. Seeing that Xiao Zhou has already won, the woman muttered to herself, that old geezer who uses Bagwazang under the Red Devil is even more ferocious and amazing than this man. But his energy is weak. He's a paper tiger. If that man sees through his weakness, the outcome would still be uncertain. Listening to the woman's muttering, Li Yan's heart suddenly sank. She asked, "Do you really like watching boxing?" The young lady seems to have a lot of knowledge about traditional martial arts. The woman smiled gently and said, "When I was young, I studied under the famous Baguazhang master, Zhang Chenjing. I can be considered a successor of the Baguazhang in film." Li Yan then cautiously asked, "The one you mentioned earlier, the one who fought Baguazhang in the ring, have you seen him fight? Could you introduce him to me?" The woman cupped her face in her hands. He whispered that he didn't fight today, and I never paid attention to his appearance. I only remember his movements. It's not authentic Bagwazang. It should come from a few northern schools. This person will be plagued by great evil. Brother, if you're going to buy him, you'd better be cautious. Li Yan pondered for a moment. Miss Wendao asked to consult Fang Ming. The woman tilted her head slightly, and with a friendly smile, looked at Li Yan and said, "My surname is Yu. I'm Yu Shu. People in the 5 elements call me Tai Shui." Li Yan's heart suddenly jolted. Are you kidding? This girl is actually Tai Shui? Can you believe that? The mastermind behind Kowloon Walled City is actually a sunny girl. Just now, Li Yan looked at the nearby elm tree with a surprised expression. He never expected that his boss's boss would actually be a woman. The elm tree looked at Li Yan, and smiled gently, saying, even if it's surprising, you should introduce yourself first. Before Li Yan could respond, a voice full of irresistible charm came through. His name is Li Yan. How could the great Taisui of Kowloon walled city not even recognize his own subordinates? Zhu Di, with a beaming smile, stepped forward. With her alluring figure and enchanting face, she caught the attention of all the gamblers around. She sat down directly beside Li Yan. She put her arm around Li Yan's. She said, don't you even know your boss's boss? Didn't Hong Gui tell you? Yu Shu tilted her head, looking at Li Yan. So you're Hong Gui's prized possession. I thought you were here for fun. Everyone in Rui Building calls me Tai Sui. Call me that too, from now on. Then, looking at Zhu Di, he said, long time no see. Madame Deng and Zhu Di's expressions were identical, but she still forced a smile and said, long time no see. Madame Tai is still so beautiful, but women should always dress up nicely. Madame Deng is right. I'll remember that. Mrs. Deng, if you know of any suitable cosmetics, please recommend them to me. Mrs. Deng, listen to these words. Zhu Di said unhappily, definitely. I have an appointment with a yen, something else to do. I'm leaving now. Then, she grabbed Li Yan and left. They arrived at the private room. Zhu Di angrily threw her handbag on the floor. Furious, she said, this woman must have done it on purpose. Li Yan picked up a cup of wine and handed it to Zhu Di. He chuckled lightly, although we haven't known each other for long. This is the first time I've seen you get so angry. Took the cup. With a sour expression, he asked Li Yan. This is the first time I've met your boss. How about it? Is she beautiful? Li Yan said solemnly, she's my big boss. Of course, it's beautiful. But still not as good as you, Sister Zhu Di. Zhu Di didn't say anything. She looked at Li Yan. She secretly thought to herself that if Ta Sui could make the red ghost follow him loyally, I too can make Li Yan bow down to me. Then she pulled Li Yan to the window. She whispered, do you know? A lot of newcomers have arrived at Kowloon walled city recently. Each of them is fierce. Then, he gestured toward the arena below with his chin. At this moment, on the entire stage, a fight had just ended. A man on stage was lying on the ground. A large amount of blood was gushing from the wound on his neck. It was clear he wouldn't survive. And his opponent stood beside him, short in stature, wearing a grotesque light rail mask. His weapon resembled a long tobacco pipe, with steel blades on the outside of the pot-like bowl. The whole thing was forged from raw iron, gleaming with sweat and dripping with blood. Looking extremely eerie, Li Yan was somewhat surprised. It's actually Lan Miansu. This is the unique weapon of the northern Chou Jiao Fanzi Quan style. Although it is very similar to the smoke dagger, it is a genuine killing blade. Zhu Di stood beside Li Yan. He softly said that the newcomer is called Wu'er. People on the site call him He Changhong. He's really arrogant. To be honest, Ian, how confident are you about facing him? Li Yan said with a half-smile. If I upset Sister Zhu Di, then I'm definitely 120% sure. Zhu Di chuckled. She thought Li Yan was joking. Then he picked up the videotape on the table, wanting Li Yan to see his usual boxing style. Li Yan directly held his hand down. He embraced Zhu Di from behind. He said seriously, I said 120%, it means 120%. Zhu Di looked at Li Yan. He closed his eyes. He lightly kissed Li Yan on the face. Yan suddenly froze. Taking this opportunity, Zhu Di escaped from Li Yan's grasp. He muttered under his breath, the scoundrel wants to flirt with me. He's still too green. At this moment, the system voice suddenly rang out. The ancient novel's Gochun Lu's location has been reported. Please receive the information. Li Yan was startled. He suddenly walked to the window. He looked down at the boxing ring. The person in 52 had already taken off his light rail mask, revealing a young and tender face. His eyes looked in disbelief at Li Yan behind the glass on the 4th floor VIP box. Li Yan smiled. He mouthed a greeting, saying, hello. The two exchanged a fleeting glance at the same time. Both systems went off at the same time. You discovered a fellow traveler. Can you believe it? The boy in front of you, with his innocent face and small stature, turns out to be a ruthless killer with no hesitation. On the rooftop of the service building, Li Yan quietly analyzed the situation in front of him. The fellow traveler he had just discovered was named Zhang Mingyuan. The only information currently available is the skill, a glimpse of the phoenix, and an ancient martial arts specialization at 69%. I know nothing else. Refers to those walking alongside. It is a term for those who walk along the same path. It refers to others who may have conflicting interests, but share the same goal. Killing a will not yield any rewards. I glanced at my progress in this current rock subjugation event. The 7th category just needs to win 2 more matches. As for the ancient novel, Gochun Lu, it only has 2 incomplete chapters. There is no clue on how to awaken the soul of the bewitched bird. However, there is no clear requirement for one person to complete it. In principle, this task can be completed in cooperation with someone named Wu'er. But the Yanfu incident also proved that, the more fragments obtained, the higher the reward. There are at most 5 pieces. So, who takes more or less? That's hard to divide. At this moment, the door on the rooftop suddenly opened. Zhang Mingyuan slowly walked over. She stood 2 or 3 meters behind Li Yan. She didn't say a word. Li Yan spoke directly. I don't like beating around the bush. Everyone here has their own reasons for being here. We don't need to ask about each other's pasts. Just hand me the 2 pieces you have. I'll find you the remains of the bewitched bird's marriage. Take this time to earn more points. Just wait for the time to come. How about it? Zhang Mingyuan slowly spoke. I'm not someone who wants to cooperate with others. I also don't trust others. It's not quite right to call me the boss of the factory and call you the woman of the factory. Let's have a fight on stage. The loser will lose everything. The winner takes it all. What do you think? Li Yan knows. In the salt bat event, if we lose the whole game, the event progress will be ignored, and we will directly return. We will never be able to interfere with anything that happens in the Salt Lake event. You're really betting everything, aren't you? Seeing that Li Yan remained silent, Zhang Mingyuan started to get anxious. He asked again whether Li Yan would agree or not. Li Yanqing snorted and said, Jilong Walled City is a chaotic mix of fish and dragons. The game between you and me can become extremely complicated. Although you have been practicing martial arts since you were young, your experience is still too shallow. Instead of dealing with someone like me, an old hand, you might as well keep it clean in the ring. You're afraid I won't take the challenge, right? Li Yan saw through what Zhang Mingyuan was thinking with a single glance. Zhang Mingyuan felt a cold sweat start to form on his forehead. Li Yan walked straight past Zhang Mingyuan. She said one thing, tomorrow. See you on the stage. As soon as the words were spoken, Zhang Mingyuan finally relaxed the tense feeling in his heart. And Li Yan, who had already left, also realized that the person who had been holding a torn piece of paper and moving in and out was not Zhang Mingyuan. Just as he reached the door of Zhu Di's private room, a blond man walked out from inside. He looked him up and down. Li Yan gave a strange laugh. The King of Hell, huh? I want to see who it is tomorrow. After saying this to the King of Hell, he then wrapped his arm around a charming woman beside him and left. Li Yan was stunned for a moment. He walked into the room and saw Zhu Di standing by the window. Meanwhile, the red ghost was leaning on the sofa, saying nothing. When he saw Li Yan enter, Zhu Di softly asked, Yan, what kind of weapon do you need? I'll have Hong Gui prepare it for you. At this point, Li Yan also had a rough idea of what was going on. It seemed the blonde man who had just left was Zhang Mingyuan's backer. This time, it looks like they're going to have a weapons showdown. Zhang Mingyuan's weapons are the unique techniques of the blue-faced cowardly 8 trigrams palm. He has quite a few weapons. What kind should I choose? After thinking for a moment, Li Yan spoke, Red Ghost brother, help me prepare a long sword. It should be at least 1 meter long. 1 meter 30 would be perfect. Red Ghost replied with a serious expression, no problem. I'll get it ready. Zhang Mingyuan is about to duel with Li Yan. What will the ending be like? Follow me and I'll help you interpret this masterpiece. How unlikely is this battle? It hasn't even started yet. Already, some want the protagonist to give up the match. In the evening, Red Ghost takes Li Yan to an ice room downstairs. The two sit facing each other. They didn't say a word. The atmosphere is a little heavy. Hong Gui knows that Li Yan's opponent this time is no ordinary person. He felt a little uneasy and asked, I asked you to get a checkup a while ago. Did you go? Li Yan took the cigarette. He said in a low voice, Brother Hong Gui, you don't have to be so verbose. I know my own body. Li Yan looked at Hong Gui. He thought to himself, Hong Gui is not a bad person. Whether he is sincere or not, he has really taken good care of me. Seeing Li Yan's casual demeanor, Hong Gui's heart sank further. Taisui said something when he saw you practicing martial arts. You're weak and exhausted. You'll be plagued by misfortune. You don't want to tell me what happened. I don't care. You've only been in the walled city for a couple of weeks. I don't want to be collecting your body so soon. If you really can't manage it, take a break. I'll handle Zhu Di's side. Li Yan felt that the concern from the soul ghost was not insincere. He thought to himself that if he could truly live here, it might actually be a good choice. He then smiled and said to the red ghost, Brother Red Ghost, with your personality, you're not cut out for running things. The red ghost chuckled self-deprecatingly. The Sui said the same thing. He said, honestly, if your health isn't up to it, don't fight anymore. Li Yan stared into the red ghost's eyes, and said seriously, will the Taishui watch me spar tomorrow? The red ghost asked, somewhat confused. Maybe, it depends on how he arranges it. Li Yan took a deep swig of his drink, and said with a serious expression, you must make sure he watches me finish this match. Walking on the way back to the apartment, Li Yan covered his nose and murmured, why does the fish ball smell in this alley keep getting stronger? It's really unbearable. After returning home, he was about to rest, when suddenly someone knocked on the door. He opened the door. Ah Xiu's pure and slightly shy face appeared in front of Li Yan. She handed him the food container and said, Yan Gu. Mom heard you're living alone. She specially made you char siu. Thank you for taking care of me. Li Yan didn't stand on ceremony either. Sometimes he comes home late, and Axiu's mother would always bring him some food. Oh, right, Axiu. I've noticed your house hasn't been using lights at night recently. You're always using candles. Is a light bulb broken? Shall I go and fix it for you? Let's see if I can fix it. It's also a good chance for me to visit Aunt Xia. Axiu suddenly lowered her head. Her face was rather gloomy. She directly rejected Li Yan. Then she left. Although Li Yan was somewhat confused by Ashio's attitude, he didn't think much of it. When Ashio returned home, she opened the door. A strong, foul odor wafted from the room. Ashio walked into the room, her eyes blank. June 24th, Bingyin year. The grand ceremony of burial, appropriate attire for the service. Underground arena. The stands were already packed. Li Yan held a fierce sword, 1.3 meters long, 3-finger wide blade, radiating light. The blood groove was dark. The sword's blade is engraved with Qi Sheng Wan Ji and the 8 characters Huan Cheng Ju Long. Li Yan struck a 7-hand sword stance. The sword indeed feels like a fine one. On the stands, Zhu Di wore a worried expression. With some unease, he asked Hong Gui, "Where did you get this sword from? Can it be trusted?" The red ghost said calmly, "Don't worry. Zhu Di, this is the Tai Sui's personal collection. I've seen the bloodthirsty aura. It'll be fine." On the bleachers, Yumu sat among the crowd, secretly thinking, the traitor is vicious. It takes the most effort. With his physical condition, he can't hold up. But that guy doesn't look like a suicidal idiot. Could it be that I misjudged him? At this time, Zhang Mingyuan also came on stage. She ripped off her cloak, holding a blue-faced old man's pole, 90 centimeters long, with a tobacco pipe 4 feet wide at both ends, wrapped in raw iron. The cigarette holder is shaped like a bird, slightly curved, recalling the previous fleeting glimpse. I saw that Li Yan's mastery of ancient martial arts had reached an impressive 81%, a full 12 percentage points higher than mine. I also knew in my heart that I must give my all this time. Only then would I have a chance to win. Both of us bowed to each other, introduced ourselves. Lion Gate, Zhang Mingyuan, He Jian, Li Yan. Zhang Mingyuan holds his pipe with one hand. His legs are slightly bent. His right leg is on the ground. He draws a circle with it. He suddenly puts force on his single leg. He bursts forth instantly. A cold light flashes in his eyes. The direct confrontation between Li Yan and Lan Mian Sua has officially begun. Who will prevail? Stay tuned for more exciting action in the next episode. The battle between He Jian's cunning fox and the young master of the Lion Gate has finally commenced. He Jian, who had already gained the upper hand, was unexpectedly crippled in his right arm with a single blow. Just now, Zhang Mingyuan gripped his pipe with one hand, exerting force with one leg. Leaping forward, the blue-faced elder rushes straight towards Li Yan's face. Li Yan swings his left hand and points. A curved hook strikes directly at the smoking rod. The immense force at the point of contact causes Zhang Mingyuan's fingers to loosen. The attack is immediately deflected. Li Yan seizes this opportunity. He grips the sword tightly in his right hand. He raises it and slashes directly at Zhang Mingyuan's left arm. The blade gleams coldly. If this attack succeeds, at best, Zhang Mingyuan will lose his grip. At worst, his arm will be severed. Seeing the critical situation, Zhang Mingyuan twists his wrist. He gripped the blue-faced man's hand. He spun around and aimed for Li Yan's temple. Li Yan quickly dodged to the side, but he still received a wound on his face. He was startled. He really shouldn't underestimate any opponent. His left hand bent slightly. His fingers closed together, in the shape of a bird, pointing at Zhang Mingyuan's wrist. Zhang Mingyuan grimaced in pain. The blue-faced lock slipped from his hand. Li Yan seized the opportunity. With a swing of his sword, he charged towards Zhang Mingyuan's face. It was almost instinctive. Zhang Mingyuan, relying on his amazing waist strength, performed an iron bridge. He quickly distanced himself from Li Yan. Li Yan, a master swordsman of the Li family of Hejian, known for his unparalleled skill with both sword and spear, drew his sword. He held his Han sword in his right hand, and grabbed the blue-face lock with his left. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although Zhang Mingyuan had dodged Li Yan's fatal attack, his left arm was still cut with a long gash by the Han sword. Blood dripped onto the ground uncontrollably. Just one round. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Mingyuan suffered a left arm injury, and his weapon was taken. In the VIP box upstairs, He Changhong saw Zhang Mingyuan's defeat, and his face darkened. In his eyes, Zhang Mingyuan's life was insignificant. Losing face before Zhu Di was what he couldn't tolerate. As for Zhu Di, he wore a smile, his earlier worries gone. On the stage, Li Yan threw his Lan Mian So down to the audience. He ducked and charged forward. The 8-sided, fierce sword in his palm slashed towards Zhang Mingyuan's legs. Zhang Mingyuan leaped. He dodged Li Yan's attack. In midair, he aimed his left foot to stomp on Li Yan's sword-holding hand. His right foot delivered a side kick to Li Yan's face. Li Yan braced himself with his right hand on the ground. He twisted his waist. The sword slashed through a circular trajectory. It directly thrust upward. Zhang Mingyuan saw the situation was dire. If he didn't dodge, he would definitely be split in half. Helpless, he could only twist his waist in midair. He flipped and landed. Before Zhang Mingyuan could catch his breath, the domineering Han sword slashed down. Zhang Mingyuan couldn't dodge in time. His right arm was slashed, leaving a long wound. But even as the sword cut through his arm, he didn't retreat. Instead, he took advantage of the falling sword, and charged forward. Li Yan saw this. He hurriedly exerted himself again. The falling Han sword was like an angry face. It rose again, attacking Zhang Mingyuan. Zhang Mingyuan leaped up. His feet landed directly on the blade. The immense force caused the Han sword to fall again. It slammed heavily onto the fighting platform. At this moment, in Zhang Mingyuan's eyes, an ancient, ferocious beast emerged. The victory or defeat will be decided at this moment. Zhang Mingyuan rose to the occasion. He used Li Yanjian's body as leverage. Spinning in midair, he delivered a back kick. A northern-style jabbing kick. Crisp and swift, a decisive blow. Flowers scattered everywhere, legs collapsing. Li Yan's jaw hit his leg. His body leaned back. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. A system prompt sounded. You have directly faced the power of the Kai Ming beast. You have obtained some information. Would you like to spend 1 yen fu point to view it? It was on the system dialog box. At this time, Zhang Mingyuan's status had changed to Rage Skill. It has an additional Kai Ming beast inheritance Furious Spirit. Every move will carry the power of the Kai Ming beast. Each attack will scorch the opponent's soul. It can be attached to any weapon. Ranged attacks only have 30% of the effect of melee attacks. Li Yan, in excruciating pain, dropped his hand, and his Han sword fell to the ground. Zhang Mingyuan's toes just touched the ground. He used his ankle to power a spinning kick. A heavy kick landed on Li Yan's shoulder. A sharp pain shot through his right arm. Li Yan knew his right arm was likely ruined. He was sent flying several meters by the immense force. He crashed heavily into the edge of the ring. The situation reversed in an instant. The fight between Li Yan and Zhang Mingyuan reached a fever pitch. Zhang Mingyuan activates the enlightened beast's inherited power. Will Li Yan be able to achieve victory? Just now, Li Yan's right arm was crippled by a kick from Zhang Mingyuan. Zhang Mingyuan's right foot is surrounded by the power of the enlightened beast, emitting a faint red glow. Then, with one kick, he sent the fierce sword flying. He grabbed it with one hand and thrust it straight at Li Yan. Li Yan's gaze was extremely indifferent as he stared at Zhang Mingyuan. Even the mighty force of the bright beast would need to land a hit. It must strike in order to work. Facing Zhang Mingyuan's attack, Li Yan twisted his steps to the right and turned his body. Like a ghost, he swayed with Zhang Mingyuan's attack. In an instant, he was right in front of Zhang Mingyuan. His right foot stepped forward. He turned and raised his left hand in a bagua palm, performing the 64 secret defensive movement, not even disturbing his clothes. His fist struck violently toward Zhang Mingyuan's chest. Zhang Mingyuan thought this was not good. He immediately realized that betraying his country was not his strong suit. Using Li Yan's force, he tried to use his footwork to force Li Yan back. Unexpectedly, just as his calf lifted, Li Yan's right foot directly stepped on his shin bone. It is actually the ultimate technique of the foot-poking door, the silk leg. At the same time, Li Yan's palm raised. Seizing this opening, she struck a powerful punch to Zhang Mingyuan's chest. Zhang Mingyuan, in midair, spat out a mouthful of blood. Immediately after, Li Yan transformed her fist into a claw. She grabbed Zhang Mingyuan's shoulder, slamming him to the ground. With a swift move, he snatched it from my left hand. His fierce sword followed suit, slashing downwards. The incomparably sharp blade aimed for Zhang Mingyuan's throat. It seemed the match was over. Deafening cheers erupted from the stands. Although the fight was short, its danger and excitement far surpassed other competitions. Li Yan violently yanked out the traitor's dagger from Zhang Mingyuan's neck. His cold, indifferent gaze fixed on Zhang Mingyuan. He asked, "What is Zhang Daojing to you?" At this moment, Zhang Mingyuan's expression had become somewhat dazed. He involuntarily responded, "She's my sister." Li Yan fell silent for a moment. He grabbed Zhang Mingyuan by the collar and harshly said, "You broke my right arm. If it doesn't heal properly this month, there will be endless consequences. I should have killed you to vent my anger." Then I threw Zhang Mingyuan off the stage. Zhang Mingyuan fell heavily to the ground. He got up and asked unwillingly, "How can you have the entangled leg techniques of the Kyo Jiaomen?" Li Yan heard Zhang Mingyuan's question. He gritted his teeth and replied, "I'll settle this with you at home." In the private room, Hong Gui let out a long breath. His hanging heart finally settled down. Zhu Di smirked. Sweating profusely, he told the red ghost, "Please step outside for a moment. Make sure to close the door when you leave." In the restroom, Li Yan endured the excruciating pain. As he reset his dislocated arm, staring at himself in the mirror, Li Yan silently thought, "One more victory. You've completed the first task. When you threw down your sword, I really thought you might lose." Xiao Zhou's voice suddenly came from behind Li Yan. Li Yan softly said, "You're not that free, are you? Came here just to watch my match? Who are you going to fight?" A little brat from Wing Chun? Li Yan licked her lips. She turned and looked at Xiao Zhou. Be careful, Qingdao. Don't capsize in the gutter. Li Yan had a rebellious personality. Very few peers in the martial arts world could match her. But for Xiao Zhou, who was stubborn, with a cold exterior and a warm heart, Li Yan truly admired him. In this era of declining traditional martial arts, masters like Xiao Zhou are already rare gems. At this moment, the younger brother outside informed Xiao Zhou that the match was about to start. Xiao Zhou slowly walked towards the door. Suddenly, he turned around and said to Li Yan, Gong Sun Yan, Zhang Yi, Cheng Fei, great men. After saying that, without any hesitation, he left. Li Yan opened his mouth. Wealth and riches cannot corrupt me. Might and power cannot subdue me. Poverty and hardship cannot move me. Can't you speak properly? Playing the intellectual? You really think I'm clinging to a rich guy? You're clearly a gangster. He's even trying to educate me. Xiao Zhou is moving his body on stage. The man in the sunglasses behind is still introducing Xiao Zhou to someone. The manager is still advising Xiao Zhou. This kid is no ordinary one. His strikes are ruthless. In the 10 matches, the opponents are either dead or severely injured. Don't show any mercy. Xiao Zhou chuckled softly. I've never held back. It's just that there's no need to go to extremes. In the arena, Xiao Zhou wasn't holding a paper tiger. Instead, he wielded a 9-ringed broadsword. The young man standing opposite him had a delicate appearance. He seemed about 18 or 19. It was hard to imagine he was someone with a ruthless heart. The young man stared at Xiao Zhou. With a smile, he said as he stepped onto the boxing ring. Life and death, irrelevant. Xiao Zhou pressed his lips together. He let out a cold sneer. He didn't respond. Instead, he cupped his hands. Du Jiachuan and the surrounding young men mimicked his gesture, cupping their fists in return. The fight between Wing Chun's Su Tianxi and Xiao Zhou was finally about to begin. Su Tianxi also revealed his weapon, the 8/saber. The 8/saber is a style of saber technique in Wing Chun. It is both a saber technique and the name of the saber. The blade is relatively short, with a slightly narrow surface. The edge is sharp and straight, designed for thrusting. The technique is fierce and brutal. Every move is deadly. From the first exchange, Xiao Zhou's eyes narrowed slightly. Realizing this opponent was no ordinary person, he no longer underestimated his opponent. The 9-ringed broadsword moved with great force and breadth, each move brimming with power. Su Tianxi's 8-slashing knife also prioritized speed. Both sides fight quickly. In the blink of an eye, the two exchanged several strikes. Su Tianxi's knife is light. His speed slightly surpasses. Taking advantage of Xiao Zhou's moment to catch his breath, he strikes horizontally, heading straight for Xiao Zhou's eyes, with both knives heavy in his grip. Xiao Zhou dodged sideways. Su Tianxi adjusted his footwork. He changed a downward chop to an upward strike. His twin blades rose. Xiao Zhou parried with his large blade. Both sides engaged without mercy. Figures flashed. Again, speed countered speed, with a series of clashing sounds. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Zhou struck 21 more blows. Xiao Zhou was fierce. At this moment, Su Tianxi could only passively defend. He raised his dual knives to block Xiao Zhou's single blade, stepping back to guard his body. Xiao Zhou held his knives high, striking one after another with relentless force. He pursued without hesitation. Su Tianxi hurriedly retreated. The plum blossom step is taken to the extreme. Xiao Zhou's knife strikes faster than the last. The Tai Chi plum blossom praying mantis steps, combined with the 9-ring broadsword, leave Su Tianxi terrified. He keeps retreating. Suddenly, Su Tianxi thrusts his sword straight at Xiao Zhou's face. Xiao Zhou can't dodge in time. A wound is left on his face, while Su Tianxi is also struck in the chest by Xiao Zhou's knife. Using the force of the blade's momentum, Su Tianxi hurriedly stepped back, avoiding the fatal strike. Xiao Zhou saw that Su Tianxi had retreated to the edge of the ring, with no way out, and rushed forward, gripping the knife with one hand and swinging it fiercely toward Su Tianxi. Su Tianxi's gaze sharpened. The 8-knife drew closer to his chest. He suddenly swung out swiftly. The blade flashed. Blood splattered. Xiao Zhou's wrist, holding the big knife, was directly severed. Taking advantage of the opening, Su Tianxi crouched and charged forward. The twin blades crossed like butterflies. The twin blades swung out. He struck heavily at Xiao Zhou's abdomen. A large amount of blood sprayed out from Xiao Zhou's body. Xiao Zhou stared in disbelief, watching as the situation, which had just been in his favor, was suddenly reversed. Li Tianxi smiled faintly. He knew he had won. At this moment, Li Yan slowly walked into the medical room and looked at Zhang Mingyue, who was lying on the bed. Despite the severe injury, she now seemed as if nothing had happened. It seems that the effect of this inheritance on the body is truly powerful. It looks like the improvement to the body is really strong. Watching the nurse place her hand on Zhang Mingyuan's leg, Li Yan smiled meaningfully. He softly said, "Excuse me, nurse, could you please step away for a moment? I need to speak to her," he added. The nurse immediately withdrew her right hand. She glanced at Zhang Mingyuan. Then she turned and left. Li Yan didn't waste any words. He reached out his hand, directly asking for the fragment. This is also one of the main reasons he came here. Zhang Mingyuan looked at him with a slight anger. He said irritably, in my arms. My left hand has a fractured cartilage. My right hand has a 40-centimeter cut from you. Take it yourself. Li Yan, who sat beside Zhang Mingyuan with a grim face. He reached his hand into Zhang Mingyuan's arms. He took out 2 fragments. Then he directly asked, is this your first time participating in the salt service incident? Second time. Zhang Mingyuan answered somewhat frustratedly, was it a fat man who brought you in? Zhang Mingyuan paused. He replied, no. A beautiful woman who I'll never forget brought me in. Li Yan pondered for a while. It seems there's more than one guide. Following that, Li Yan posed the question he most wanted answered. What reward would he receive after completing the Yanfu incident? What reward will I get? This man is incredibly arrogant. He came here to cause trouble with hundreds of men. Just now. Li Yan asked Zhang Mingyuan about the reward he received for completing the infiltration mission the first time. A flash of fanaticism crossed Zhang Mingyuan's eyes. It was said that completing the first rock rune event would guarantee the inheritance of a rock rune. It is a power beyond the ordinary. Li Yan silently lit a cigarette. He coldly spoke, no need for nonsense. Why all the knife talk? If it were really useful, I'd be the one lying here. What's next? Zhang Mingyuan rolled his eyes at Li Yan. He irritably explained the rules of the salt token. After the salt token event is completed, all actions will be settled. The higher the evaluation, the more salt token points you get. Higher points also increase your purchasing rights. The most efficient method is to kill. Killing, Li Yan took a deep puff of smoke. He didn't say anything else. Zhang Mingyuan glanced at Li Yan. Then he continued, saying that in about 1 or 2 hours, the power of the enlightened beast will dissipate. Your right arm will be fine. Upon hearing this news, Li Yan visibly relaxed a bit. There are still a few tough battles ahead. It would be troublesome if the right hand is injured. This is the best news I've heard today. Li Yan stood up. He fixed his gaze on Zhang Mingyuan and asked the final question. Were you the one playing cat and mouse with me these past few days? Zhang Mingyuan looked at Li Yan with some suspicion. I don't know what you're talking about. That person is definitely not me. What exactly is the relationship between you and my sister? Old lovers. After saying that, he left the ward without looking back. On the way back, Li Yan was still secretly admiring Zhang Mingyuan's physical fitness. He took 3 of my swords, and only lost his ability to fight after a palm strike and a punch. At that moment, the phone suddenly rang. Li Yan glanced at the number. It was a call from Hong Gui. The line was filled with noise. A pleasant female voice came through. Ah Yan. Right, take the young man through the back door of the whole building. If anyone tries to stop you, beat them to death. Li Yan was stunned. It's actually Ta Sui calling. The newly appointed scribe quickly headed for the boxing ring upstairs. At this moment, Ba Shanjiu in the underground boxing ring displayed his well-toned muscles, the Yiksha tattoo on his chest. His eyes widened in anger. Hundreds of gang members surrounded the ring, making it impossible to move. Hua Shanjiu looked at Ta Sui with a gloomy expression and said, if I don't chop him to death today, no one's getting out of here. Huashan's wine is amazing. What do you want? If you want to cause trouble, you should know your place. At this time, Li Yan also arrived. He whispered to Hong Gui. What happened? Why is it such a big commotion? Hong Gui said with a gloomy face, little Zhou lost. His right hand was severed. He was stabbed twice in the abdomen. His intestines were spilling all over the ground. The people from Huashan Liquor took him to get medical treatment, but the people from Liansheng started causing trouble, demanding an explanation. Li Yan glanced at Huashan Liquor. Clearly, he didn't want to see this outcome either, but he didn't say much more. Stepping into the ring, no one can guarantee a win. He looked to see who the young man was that Hong Gui Taisui had asked him to take away. Hong Gui waved his hand. He took Li Yan to the back room. Looking at the people inside, he said, get this kid safely out of Kowloon walled city. He must not die under our noses. In the empty back room sat a young man with a bandaged midsection. There are scars of all sizes all over his body. The most severe is on his abdomen. When Li Yan walked in, the young man's eyes lit up. He excitedly asked, are you the king of hell? This man is just too powerful. With just one glance, he scared a group of desperados into fleeing. Just now, Li Yan met the young man who defeated Xiao Zhou backstage. Can you walk by yourself? Li Yan, having received an affirmative answer, directly left the hall through the back door. Meanwhile, the young man following him chattered incessantly. My name is Su Tianxi. If I win again, there will be no opponent left for you in this boxing ring. I have been practicing martial arts for more than 10 years, but these past few days have been the most thrilling. That little Zhou is really impressive. His 9-ring broadsword made my arm go weak. Unfortunately, I was still a bit faster. Li Yan suddenly stopped. Although it wasn't for long, Li Yan already considered little Zhou as half a friend in his heart. This Su Tianxi, who severely injured Xiao Zhou, is actually showing off here. You say you practice traditional martial arts. Do you believe in martial morality? Su Tianxi froze, then shook his head. Huh, that kind of thing is outdated. Li Yan burst into laughter. He suddenly turned around, lifted his leg and side-kicked, as if a tiger descending the mountain. He landed a harsh kick on Su Tianxi's still bleeding abdomen. Su Tianxi was kicked a meter away, slamming into the wall behind him. Li Yan stood firm. He said indifferently, I think so too. Then, turning around, I continued walking forward. I don't want to be chopped into mincemeat by Lian Sheng and his men. I'd better get up and run. Su Tianxi wiped the blood from his mouth. He stared at Li Yan. I will definitely return that kick. I'm waiting. Just then, the phone rang. After answering, a resentful voice came through. You dead man. Where did he go? I'm busy. As Li Yan spoke on the phone with Zhu Di, he was also helping Su Tianxi escape. Two people, associated with Lian Sheng, were crouching near the stairwell. They were eyeing Li Yan and Su Tianxi. When Su Tianxi walked past, the two suddenly stood up. He tried to grab Su Tianxi's shoulder. A shadow flashed by. A fierce crash. It hit the man's chin hard. The other person saw this. Instinctively, he reached for the knife at his waist. The machete suddenly blurred before his eyes. Li Yan delivered a side kick. He kicked him hard in the face. Both of them immediately lost consciousness. Just as he picked up the machete that had fallen on the ground, Li Yan, still on the phone, saw a group of people with Lian Sheng coming up the stairs with weapons. He immediately threw the phone to Su Tianxi. He leapt into the air, diving down. His right foot landed directly on the face of a thug. Then he quickly executed a backflip. With a twist of the waist, he landed a blow to the thug's chest. Then, using the recoil, he knocked down the last thug. In the blink of an eye, he took out all three of them. Su Tianxi stood off to the side, his phone still ringing. Yan, what are you doing? Why is it so noisy around you? Are you even listening to me? Before Su Tianxi could speak, the phone was grabbed away. In a soft and gentle voice, they said, Sister Zhu Di, I'll be done here soon. I'll call you back later. He hung up the phone after saying that. He shouted at Su Tianxi, hurry up. At that moment, the back door of Fui building was already locked with chains. A group of people, with Lian Sheng, was guarding here. They looked at Li Yan's arrival. The leader of the thugs said, he's here. One by one, more than 10 people stood up. They are all holding bright, shiny objects in their hands. Li Yan and the others walked over slowly. The leader of the gang had a cold glint in his eyes. He asked his underling, a Thai. Didn't I tell you to get a shotgun from the Vietnamese, just in case? Hurry up and take it out. Brother who needs time to get the gun from the Vietnamese. You're rushing him too much. We haven't got it yet. Watching the two slowly walk over. Brother who was also uncertain. Although the other side is skilled, he was struck in the stomach by Xiao Zhou. He should be seriously injured. We even specially brought a hunting grappling hook with us. There's no reason we can't handle this guy. At this moment, Li Yan's face was calm. His whole body radiating a murderous aura. His eyes glowed red. Like the arrival of death itself. Hugo looked at Li Yan. Cold sweat dripping from his forehead. You didn't get the gun, right? No. No. Google finally gave Li Yan a fierce glare. A sentence shot out from the root of its teeth. Withdraw. This little brat is so arrogant. His injuries aren't even healed yet, and he's already challenging Li Yan. Just now, Li Yan safely escorted Su Tianxi out of the Longqing fortress. Now that Su Tianxi is out of danger, he begins to complain. I signed a life and death agreement before getting on stage. Once I'm on the stage, there's no turning back. If you lose and don't follow the rules, it's really pointless. Li Yan glanced at him, and sighed quietly in his heart. The things in this world, there's never been any logic to it. This is about human relationships and social customs, not rules. Su Tianxi looked at Li Yan. As if he hadn't heard a word he said. He was furious. He shouted angrily, 15 days. Within 15 days, I'll be fully recovered. Li Yan did not answer Su Tianxi's words. Instead, he turned and silently left. Hua Shan and the Jiu Tai Sui watched as Lian Sheng's men continued to pour into the fortress. Li Yan sighed. It seems tonight won't be peaceful. 3 days later, Li Yan arrived at the servicemen's building carrying a pile of shopping bags. Hong Gui teasingly looked at Li Yan and said, looking sharp, I just got back from a date with Zhu Di. I learned from Hong Gui that the matter with Lian Sheng has been settled. These past 3 days, bigwigs from all sides gathered. Finally, under pressure from all parties, the city fortress, Lian Sheng's people chose to end the conflict. Ning Yuan training room. Yushu's training outfit perfectly highlights her curvaceous figure. The aura of a sunny girl comes at you. Her youthful face is filled with determination and seriousness. It's hard to believe that such a pure girl is actually involved in the underworld. Tai Sui, you were looking for me? Yushu stood up, looked at Li Yan, and smiled. Besides Su Tianxi, no one on the Dragon City fighting stage can fight better than you. That guy is just here to have fun. No matter how things turn out between you, The title of the 6th class champion will belong to you in the future. Of course, I have to look out for the future pillar of the stage. Li Yan clasped his hands and cupped them. Tai Sui, you're joking. I'm not even qualified to be a champion. Just looking to make some seed money. He went back to the countryside to retire. Yu Shu raised an eyebrow, as if he had seen through Li Yan's thoughts. You don't want to work with me? Li Yan was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly laughed. How did he get out of the service building? Li Yan asked Hong Gui if he knew which hospital Xiao Zhou was in. Red Ghost gave Li Yan a meaningful glance. He smiled. There are just too few people like Li Yan, who are so sentimental. Hong Kong St. Mary's Hospital. Li Yan was holding a fruit basket. He had just arrived at the hospital door, when he heard the voice of Hua Shanjiu. Xiao Zhou, I see that you were seriously injured by that guy. You must have been enraged and caused a scene while serving. I wasn't prepared for that in advance. Hua Shanjiu suddenly saw Li Yan walking in from the door. There was some displeasure in his eyes. You really have guts. Daring to come to Jiugu. If there's a grievance, there's a reason. Xiao Zhou was injured at Su Tianxi's hands. How can this debt possibly fall on me? If you don't mind, let's practice martial arts alone for a while. Since Li Yan came in, Xiao Zhou's gaze had been fixed on him. He nodded towards Hua Shanjiu upon hearing this. Hua Shanjiu glared at Li Yan, and walked out with a cold face. Li Yan picked up the fruit knife from the table, skillfully peeling an apple. How's the injury? No lasting problems? Sought medical attention promptly. After the arm was reattached, it might ache when it's rainy or cloudy. Rest in bed for half a year, and you'll be fine. Li Yan listened quietly to Xiao Zhou's light-hearted words, but he understood. My arm is broken. I've already expended most of my effort this time. Withdraw. This matter. You should have repaid any debts of gratitude you owed them. Xiao Zhou smiled weakly, looking at Li Yan. You came just to tell me this? Li Yan looked at Xiao Zhou seriously. Yes, it's just to say this. She then placed the fruit platter she had prepared in front of Xiao Zhou. Xiao Zhou shook his head slightly. Take care of yourself, okay? The two of them were silent. In the end, Li Yan and Xiao Zhou didn't have a deep friendship. They simply admired each other. After a while, Li Yan stood up, and said goodbye to Xiao Zhou. She was about to leave. When she reached the door, Xiao Zhou suddenly called out to her from behind. Master Li, thank you. She left the room. The anger on Li Yan's face also dissipated. We are strangers meeting by chance. All of us are travelers in a foreign land. The mountains and rivers are hard to cross. Who laments the lost traveler? Xiao Zhou has left the stage, but I am still here, a practitioner of martial arts. How long can I hold on to this resentment? How much longer can I keep this anger inside? Some things. It's time to let go. Such a delicate and beautiful woman throwing herself at you. Would you accept? Just now, Li Yan actually broke up with Zhu Di. June 28th, the year of the tiger. A day auspicious for trading and weddings. Inside the Yi Jia Yun Tun Noodle restaurant, Zhu Di took a deep breath, staring intently at Li Yan. Forcing down his anger, said, take back what you just said. Let's pretend nothing happened. I spend millions every night to support your business. Even underwear costs several $1,000s. You treat me to an $80 bowl of wonton noodles, and then you break up with me? Li Yan put down his empty bowl. He wiped his mouth. He ignored Zhu Di's words. Zhu Di looked at Li Yan. He bit his lower lip, waiting for him to explain. But unexpectedly, Li Yan had no intention of explaining. Instead, he directly called the waiter again. Zhu Di slammed the table and stood up. His eyes almost shot fire. He spoke to Li Yan in a grim tone. Listen to me. As long as I want, I can throw you into the sea to feed the fish tonight. I guarantee that by tomorrow, there will be no king of hell in Longcheng. Believe it or not. Li Yan silently lit a cigarette. He knew this wasn't the time to be indecisive. He spoke directly. Sister Zhu Di, when you put it like that, I'm really panicked. Let's settle accounts clearly, item by item. Throughout our entire competition, I never let you lose money. Everything I bought you, I've already packed it and mailed it to your villa. We've been together for about 20 days. If it's not working out, we'll break up. We haven't played poker. No one is at a loss. Don't you think I'm being very reasonable? Everything's fine. Zhu Di gritted his teeth. She took one last look at Li Yan. She grabbed her handbag. Then she turned and left. Watching Zhu Di's departing back, Li Yan was somewhat dazed. He silently sighed. If he had really tied him up at the beginning, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. I don't have much time left in this world. I hope I don't leave Zhu Di with too much hurt, and Axiu's matter needs to be resolved. 2 days ago, Hong Gui suggested that Li Yan move into the service building. But Li Yan refused. I don't have much time left. He doesn't want to cause any trouble. It was noon. Walking in the small alley of the apartment, Li Yan still felt a chill. A little cat suddenly rubbed against Li Yan's foot. Isn't this Ami from Ashio's house? She glanced at the door of Ashio and her daughter's house. Sure enough, it was open. Li Yan gently pushed the door. A pungent odor in the room made her frown. The smell of the fish ball factory, It's so stinky, yet you didn't even close the window properly. Li Yan put down the cat. She walked over and shut the window tightly. Who are you looking for? Li Yan's hair stood on end at the sound of a raspy radio in her ear. A terrifying face appeared behind Li Yan. At that moment, Ah Xiao noticed that the door of the house had been opened. Startled, she opened her mouth. She quickly pushed the door open and went inside. Li Yan was standing on the stool, holding the light bulb he had just replaced. Ah Xiao, you're back. Your cat, Mi, just ran outside. I brought it back. I also replaced the light bulb for you. At this moment, Ah Xiao's mother's voice came from the kitchen. Xiao Yan, are you staying for dinner? Sure, sorry to trouble you, auntie. Li Yan looked at Ah Xiao, who was lowering her head and remained silent. He said with a smile, Ah Xiao, Yan Gu, here's 100 yuan. Could you go buy some pork for us? We already have them at home. Li Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. She seemed to sense something. In a short while, a delicious meal was ready. Li Yan didn't eat much. She only ate some greens. After a brief conversation, the meal was fairly harmonious. Li Yan said goodbye to Ah Xiao and her daughter. She returned to the apartment. Li Yan stood still for a moment. She dialed Honggui's number. Are there any available rooms in the Honggui building? I want to move. Li Yan's tone remained the same. Without waiting for Honggui to respond, she hung up the phone. Sitting at the edge of the bed, Li Yan lit a cigarette. He pondered, are there really ghosts and spirits in this world? If there are, there's no need for me to disturb them. What I smelled at Ah Xiao's place was definitely not the stench of fish. It was the smell of decay. It was the smell of a corpse. The pure image of Ah Xiao keeps appearing in my mind. Although I'm very sorry, but she's already dead, and I have to live on. Such a delicate and beautiful woman is infatuated with you. Would you be willing? Just now. Li Yan, who had just said goodbye to Ah Xiao and her daughter, returned to the apartment. He picked up the charm of the bewitching bird's deer. The broken piece of the bewitching bird's charm. It still holds a trace of the lingering soul of the charm. He yearned for a fragment of the mother's soul, unwilling to leave, to supplement and calm himself. Every encounter in this world is never a coincidence. I think you know what you need to do. Looking at the system's prompt, Li Yan remained silent. Is it the soul of someone unwilling to leave their children behind? The hint from Yanfu is already quite clear. We need to use Ah Xiao's mother's soul to complete the unfinished firebird in the fragment. Ah Xiao, you won't blame Brother Yan, will you? Ah Xiao's image keeps appearing in my mind. Li Yan, this man who is decisive in killing to survive, feels some reluctance for the first time. He is reluctant to break Ah Xiao and Li Yan's fragmented dream, shattering that seemingly warm home. Li Yan then pulled out the remaining 3 fragments from his chest. A series of messages popped up. Kuainyo's strange offensive. After being devoured by the bewitching bird, you can obtain a more powerful inheritance or other rewards upon settlement. Devour? It's the gold-leafed Xian paper in Li Yan's hand. In an instant, a faint golden flame ignited. In the air, Li Yan heard the continuous, dull roars like that of a dragon and tiger. The system's voice sounded again. The seductress bird has consumed the soul of the Kuainyo from the odd work chamber. The night in Kowloon walled city seemed especially calm tonight. The serviceman's tower. Li Yan walked into the room, looking at the chilling weapon on the weapon rack. Wanjing's breath. The 8 characters drive the dragon around the city. Faint dragon energy surrounds it. Li Yan had already made up her mind. Taking my sword this late, where are you going? Yu Shu looked at Li Yan calmly, waiting for her answer. I turned around and looked at the elm tree. There was no sign of panic. I have some personal matters to handle. It has nothing to do with the whole station. The elm tree walked in slowly. It found a chair and sat down. Slightly headache, it said. If you're not in a hurry, let's talk. What's going on between you and Zhu Di? Seeing that Li Yan didn't respond, he continued. Women, you know. After double-clicking, it's easy to lose track of priorities. I manage the whole platform. It's not easy. Please be understanding. It's just a game. You won't lose out, right? Li Yan gave Yu Shu a strange look. She really thinks of me as a little wolf dog. Ta Sui and the others say the strongest fighter in Kowloon walled city isn't Honggui, but you. Why don't we both put on some protective gear, and spar a bit? Yu Shu, upon hearing this, tilted her head, smiling at Li Yan. Alright, I can see you're quite upset. Helping others calm down is something I'm good at. In a fairly spacious room, the two stand facing each other. Li Yan holds a trader's bladder, his face stern. His expression is serious. He Jian, Li Yan. Please enlighten me with your teachings, with the elm tree holding a dark greenish-black blade. It is indeed the warrior of the Bagua sect. The blade is 5 fingers wide. The blade's surface is mottled. The horse tail hangs down to the waist. The Bagua elm tree. Please, give me your guidance. At this moment, inside a villa in Clearwater Bay, Zhu Di is wearing a turtleneck pajama. He muttered angrily, I won't let him get away with this. Absolutely not. Suddenly, a phone rang. His assistant handed the phone to Zhu Di. Zhu Di listened quietly to the other person. His expression changed. He hung up the phone. Zhu Di poured himself a glass of red wine. The assistant beside him noticed that Zhu Di looked a little flustered. He quickly asked, "What's wrong?" "The stolen goods from the bank robbery have been accounted for. A few rare pages from the Republic of China Master's collection are missing. Now, someone is offering a high price for these rare pages. Coincidentally, I saw these rare pages while he was changing clothes." Thinking of this, Zhu Di's face was slightly flushed. He murmured, "This bastard." On June 30th of the Bingyin year, it was deemed appropriate to bury and preserve the tomb. The sky was dim. Li Yan, holding a Han sword, arrived at Ashio's doorstep. The remnants of the cuckoo bird pressing against his chest grew even hotter. It seemed to be thirsting for something. With a gentle push, the door was unlocked. It opened easily. A strong smell of blood filled the air. Li Yan's pupils constricted. Blood splattered everywhere on the walls. Faint moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the room slightly. Ashio's mother sat upright in the chair, motionless. It seemed like she was waiting for something. The eerie atmosphere made Li Yan break out in a cold sweat. "Aunt, you're not sleeping this late?" The woman didn't say a word. The whole room was unnervingly clean. He slowly walked up to the woman. He forced himself to endure the stench. He finally saw the woman's face clearly. Her entire face had begun to rot. Large, black necrotic spots were shocking to the eye. There were even areas on her body where damp fluid started to leak out, and maggots were crawling on her. The woman's closed eyelids suddenly snapped open. Her decayed, foul-smelling fingers grasped Li Yan's neck. Li Yan hurriedly stepped back. He drew his welding sword. A flash of sword light. The woman's dark, axe-like arm was severed by Li Yan's sword. Li Yan's eyes widened. The blade aimed straight for the corpse ghost's head. The woman leaped. She dodged the fatal blow. After landing, the woman propped herself up with one hand, crawling on the ground in a bizarre posture, her eyes glowing red, staring fixedly at Li Yan. Li Yan was also startled. It must be the first time she's encountered something like this. The woman suddenly charged forward. Her speed greatly increased. Li Yan showed no intention of backing down. With a tiger leap, the sword approached the corpse ghost. The blade pierced directly into the woman's chest. However, the woman ignored it. She raised her arm and grabbed at Li Yan. Li Yan attempted to pull back the Han sword, but found his strength was like a drop in the ocean. He unhesitatingly released the hilt. He kicked back with his left leg. The right foot fiercely kicked the sword hilt. The entire Han sword pierced through the woman's body. Only the sword hilt was left exposed. At the same time, the woman's sharp nails left 3 claw marks on Li Yan's face. His eyelid was damaged. When Li Yan opened his eyes again, the woman was gone. Li Yan didn't think twice. Twisting and turning, was hit hard on his back, as if by a steel whip. But there was nothing behind him. Li Yan gasped for breath, carefully observing his surroundings. He shouted loudly, "Axiu, are you there?" Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his waist. A shadow flashed by. A bone-picking dagger stabbed into his waist. Instinctively, he reached back to grab the opponent's shoulder. But once again, he grasped at air. He didn't expect the woman to be so fast. Li Yan had no choice but to pull out the dagger. A large amount of blood sprayed from the wound. He endured the excruciating pain. Li Yan chuckled softly. "Aunt, are you angrier than I am? If I were to die like this, it would be far more intense than you. How about we meet again in the underworld?" The room was silent. Li Yan warily looked around. His eyes felt incredibly sore, but he dared not blink at all. The blood on his eyelid slowly dripped into his eye. Finally, Li Yan couldn't help but blink. In that less than half a second, a rotten, hideous face was almost pressed against his. Li Yan suddenly spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. It sprayed right onto the woman's face. The woman covered her face and stepped back. Li Yan had always heard that the tip of the tongue had a miraculous effect in driving away ghosts. It seems it wasn't false after all. Taking this opportunity, Li Yan didn't hesitate. She plunged the boning knife in her hand directly towards the woman's face. Just then, a cry came, "Mom!" Li Yan's heart trembled. The dagger is retrieved in midair. He spins around, forcefully changing his move. He kicks the woman hard, sending her flying. Axiu's face is pale at this moment. She shakily holds up a pistol. Her eyes are red as she looks at Li Yan. She begs, saying, Don't hit my mom. This woman is truly tragic. She became a corpse spirit, lingering in the human world to take care of her daughter. Now, once again, for her daughter, she is willing to sacrifice her own soul. Just now, Ashio was trembling as she held a gun. A fleeting glance at Li Yan triggered it. Name, Zhang Changxiu. Status, wealthy. Prolonged contact with parrots has led to a loss of vital energy and lifespan. Where did you get that gun? Li Yan walked towards Axiu with a blank expression. Suddenly, a gust of wind brushed past her left ear. Li Yan didn't think twice. Lowering her waist and raising her leg, she swept her high leg across the corpse ghost's cheek, kicking it aside. From this kick, Li Yan clearly felt that the corpse ghost was significantly weaker than before. Axia closed her eyes in fear, her pale fingers trying to pull the trigger. But she found that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pull it. Li Yan snatched the gun from Axia's hand. He pulled the safety and fired a shot into the air. There was a loud bang. Aisho was so frightened that she collapsed to the ground. "Let go of my daughter." The corpse-like creature wobbled to its feet. It hissed at Li Yan. But it did not make another rash move. At this moment, Li Yan's expression was somewhat complex. After a moment of silence, he said to Aisho, "You go inside and wait for a while. I'll talk with Auntie." Aisho bit her lower lip, tears in her eyes as she looked at Li Yan. But her body remained still. Although the corpse demon's face was grotesque, her tone was exceptionally gentle. She said to Aisho, "Good daughter. You go in first. Listen to your mother." Aisho hesitated for a moment. Li Yan grabbed Aisho's arm and pushed her into the room. She locked the door behind her. He kicked the door lock to break it, while Axia cried and beat on the door, pleading with Li Yan not to kill him. "Mom, why are you here to disturb us? I just want to stay and take care of my daughter." Li Yan heard the woman's question, silent for a moment, calmly said, "Auntie, I will make sure to send you on your way today. Aisho, I'll have someone take care of you. It's definitely better than waiting for death with you. I'm only here to save my life, not because I have any right to lecture you. I'm not in a position to advise you. Let's settle this with action, not words." With that, he took out the torn piece of the bewitching bird from his chest. The woman stared intensely at the torn piece of the bewitching bird. Suddenly, I felt relieved. "You want my soul. It doesn't matter if it's me or him. I can agree to your terms, but I want you to swear that you'll take care of Aisho." "I won't swear. I'll say it one last time. No matter what, I will do everything I can to take care of Axia, believe it or not." The woman suddenly looked up. Red light shone in her eyes. She shouted at Li Yan, "Remember what you said." A powerful spiritual force burst forth. The light dissipated. The woman's body fell heavily to the ground. The remaining pages of the bewitched bird in Li Yan's hand have changed again. "You have awakened the residual soul of the bewitched bird. You have completed the most crucial part of the current Yanfu incident. You have gained the right to end this Yanfu incident. Please decide whether to end it within 10 minutes. Once you refuse to end it, you will only be able to return to the real world. After completing all the requirements, your current outstanding task is to reach level 7 at Kowloon Spring Platform. Failure to complete this will affect your settlement reward." Looking at the remnants of the goo bird, Li Yan said, "It's not the end yet." Refusing to end. Meanwhile, in a KTV in the walled city, a system prompt sounds. The other party has completed the most critical part of the Yanfu incident. They have gained the right to end this Yanfu incident. Once the other party chooses to end it, it will be determined that you have failed the event. You will immediately return to the other party. Refusing to end this Yanfu incident, and leaving your fate in someone else's hands, is the most foolish thing. The adult walks in the pink light. This young man's face looks grim. He suddenly threw the glass cup in his hand, and said fiercely, "All right, then I'll play along with you until the end." Finally, the last Yanfu appeared. He even kidnapped Zhu Di. Just now, Li Yan saw off Aisho's mother. Looking at the fallen woman, he took off his coat and covered the upper half of the body. He turned around and opened the door. Li Yan remained silent. At this moment, Aisho was curled up in the corner, hugging her knees with both hands. Her eyes are hollow, and the room is filled with bodies scattered in all directions. Li Yan suddenly felt heartache for the girl in front of her. She didn't know what this girl had to endure every day. She gently reached out her hand, wanting to pull Aisho up. Aisho suddenly lunged forward. She grabbed Li Yan's hand. Her teeth viciously sank into the back of her hand. Axia's bite made Li Yan's hand bleed profusely. Li Yan's face remained expressionless. She understood Axia's helplessness. She gently placed her hand on the girl's head. "Come with me." Inside an apartment in the service building, Li Yan is leaning against the door, sitting with a cigarette butt. In the room, Aisho's hair is wet. She changed into a loose outfit. "Stay here for a few days. In a few days, I'll find a way to get you out of the city walls. No need to worry about it. I don't want to see you again." Aisho's voice was a little hoarse. It seemed like she was still angry. Li Yan chuckled. He turned and walked out of the room. He wouldn't stay here for long. He had to make arrangements quickly. Aisho picked up the phone. She looked at the name Zhu Di on the screen. "Oh, how do I even begin?" I hesitated for ages. Finally, I made the call. "Zhu Di, how have you been these past few days? Did you use the prescription I gave you for calming the mind and improving brain function?" I flushed that prescription down the toilet. "And all those strange and unusual scraps of paper you collected, I'm going to flush those down the toilet too." Li Yan was startled. He hurriedly asked, "What do you mean? Where did you hear that?" But Zhu Di didn't answer. He hung up directly. A wave of gloom washed over Li Yan. He dialed Zhu Di's number again, but couldn't get through. Suddenly, I felt uneasy. 5 torn pages. 4 of them are in my hands. This woman won't go looking for them, will she? The remaining one should be with the elusive Yen Fuxing. In a private room of a bar in Longcheng, a man in a dark pinstriped suit, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, is eating cake. No one would guess that this man before them is a rising star in Liansheng's underworld circles. His name is Yu. Yu glanced at the female bodyguards surrounding him, who were watching him intently. Based on the data from a quick glance, the beautiful woman with blue hair before him held a strong hostility towards him. Yu licked his lips. Let's talk price first. 100,000 per photo. Yu remained silent. He waved his hand dismissively. Zhu Di didn't blink. He directly stated, 200,000. The man hesitated. Zhu Di stood up and sneered, you're greedy. Being a gangster has its advantages. Let's go. Wait, 200,000 is 200,000. Zhu Di said directly, give me the things, take the money and leave. He didn't waste a single word. He didn't want to stay here for long. The man grinned, I wouldn't carry something worth 200,000 on me. Come to my house to get it. Zhu Di turned around and said, all right. No problem. He still didn't take the man with a rough demeanor seriously, but Li blocked Yu's way. She turned to the side, revealing the pistol at her waist. She reminded him, I just want to tell you, don't get any weird ideas. At this moment, Li Yan was still searching for Zhu Di. He calmly analyzed the situation in front of him. This person had been toying with him for several days. They always operated in areas where gangs were clustered in the city. He must be a Hun. He must have guessed my identity. He must also know my relationship with Zhu Di. He even deliberately let Zhu Di find him. The month is almost over. Such a patient opponent. This is tricky. Just as Li Yan drove to the entrance of Zhu Di's villa, the phone rang. A strange voice came through, 20 minutes. Poland Street, Saints Day rental apartment. I'm clearing the place out today. If you don't come, you'll never see your little lover again. Such a delicate and beautiful woman has been kidnapped, and the kidnapper's motive isn't money. Just now, Li Yan, who had just received the news of Zhu Di's kidnapping, followed the instructions and arrived at Poland Street. Poland Street is a famous red light district in Hong Kong. It has convenient transportation. It is densely populated. There are clocks, hotels, bars, and nightclubs everywhere. Endless nightlife. Li Yan held a machete wrapped in cloth, resembling a dog's leg. He cautiously eyed the people around him. Suddenly, his chest felt a burning sensation. The location of the Gochin fragment from the ancient novel has been reported. Please acknowledge receipt. Li Yan looked up. The fragment's location was the Wuxing daily rental apartment. Meanwhile, Yu calmly lit a cigarette. The plan, so long in the making. It's all for today. Zhu Di's face was pale, his hands bound by ropes. He still didn't know what Yu's goal was. To save his life, he tentatively said, if it's money you want, we can talk. This place is crowded. Kidnapping me won't get you much. I can cooperate with you to leave here, but you need to call and send the person who brought me here to the hospital first. What Zhu Di said was an example. The white shirt he was wearing was already soaked in blood. He was coughing up blood from time to time. It looked like his injuries were severe. Yu glanced at him. He gave a lecherous smile and said, don't worry. This girl is so hot. It suits my taste. I won't let her die easily. As for leaving here, what a joke. This is my domain. Who stays, who goes, who lives, who dies. I decide. At this time, a system prompt sounded in Yu's mind. Please note, you are only 10 hours away from your final return. Deadline. Your current targets 2 and 3 are incomplete. Items 2 are the most crucial. Completing them will grant you return eligibility. Yu's second requirement for the Yanfu incident is to clear out all the walkers involved in this incident. One target remains. He is very clear about his goal. As long as he defeats Li Yan, he can accomplish both objectives 2 and 3 at the same time. He will perfectly complete the Yanfu incident. Aren't you an orphan? You've never even been to the mainland. How could you know Li Yan? With Zhu Di's question, Yu's thoughts were pulled back to reality. He smiled lightly at Zhu Di. Since you knew to investigate beforehand, why wouldn't I check up on your lover? Just then, his eyes narrowed. His face darkened as he watched Li Yan walk into the apartment from outside the window. This was the 4th Yanfu incident he had experienced. Although he had been through 3 Yanfu incidents, but their specialization does not belong to the combat type. Instead, they have an advantage in reconnaissance, so they were able to discover his identity earlier than Li Yan. However, their direct combat ability is nearly 0. Biological affinity 63%. This ability is much rarer than ancient martial arts. With the inheritance ability of their 8 serpents, the win rate is naturally much higher. Although once the 8 serpents are released, they can only move within a 200-meter radius. If they exceed this range, they will suffer severe backlash. But in such a small space, it is enough. At this moment, Li Yan just walked into the apartment and frowned. This is truly scheming. The space here is so small. If I were wielding a Han sword, I wouldn't be able to move freely. Zhu Di's bodyguards all carry guns. If he had the strength of a hardened soldier with firearms, he wouldn't need to threaten me with Zhu Di. If the opponent were truly capable, they wouldn't have waited until now to strike. If I didn't have other things to do, I could have ended this incident long ago. This guy is relying on the passive approach of thinking I'll rush over after hearing the news for his plans and schemes. What if I don't show up? Wouldn't your plotting be in vain? At that moment, a cold and sinister thought crossed Li Yan's mind. Set this place on fire. Force him out. Even if innocents get hurt. These people are complete strangers to me anyway. Even Zhu Di. We've only known each other for a little over 20 days. A real man is ruthless. Besides, it's not certain he'll get into trouble. This idea is tempting, but it was quickly dismissed by Li Yan. He wasn't going to waste his anger. A fierce tiger does not fear a ditch in front of it. A coward sees obstacles everywhere. At this moment, Li Yan suddenly noticed a white-haired man with a gun, hiding behind him in the mirror. Danger! The battle between Li Yan and the 8 serpents finally began. In just one round, he was knocked flying. Just now, Li Yan saw the white-haired man in the mirror. Danger! Li Yan quickly ducked and rolled on the ground. A bang sounded in his ears. Sparks flew up from the ground. Behind the wall, Yu gritted his teeth. Li Yan's sharpness made him feel a bit tricky. He had just popped his head out. When a bullet hit the wall, it startled him. Seeing Yu step out, Li Yan quickly drew his pistol and fired. A jarring sound of metal shattering sent a chill down one's spine. A faintly visible, 3-meter-long, arm-thick black snake, wreathed in dark energy, coiled around the man. Bullets struck the black snake's scales, and fell to the ground. Li Yan furrowed his brows, beads of cold sweat appearing on his forehead. A system prompt sounded. You have faced the power of 8 snakes. From the data feedback from the brief glimpse, the man's name is Li Jiangyu. His current status is Viper. He has inherited the 8 serpents. In addition to the brief glimpse, he also has the skills 8 Serpents Fang and Golden Talisman. It is unknown what their effects are. He seems to be spitting apricot's 8 tongues. Li Yan felt a bit creeped out. At that moment, the system voice sounded again. You have discovered the predator. The predator and the act of a fleeting glance are irreconcilable contradictions. One side must exit, or even die, to resolve it. Being preyed upon. If you kill the predator, you will obtain all the purchase permissions and 30% of the settlement reward from the opponent in this rock collapse event. And there is a certain chance to devour their inheritance. Predators will not receive rewards for killing their prey. However, you can 100% devour the inheritance of the prey that the predator already possesses. It can be obtained through certain special items. After reading the introduction to the 8 serpent inheritance and the hunter, Li Yan had a plan in mind. Since bullets won't work, he immediately holstered his pistol. He drew his kukri. He charged towards Li Jiangyu. Seeing Li Yan charging at him, Li Jiangyu chuckled. He had great confidence in his 8 snakes. The lead snake lunged, like lightning, towards Li Yan's neck. Just as the two were about to collide, Li Yan bent her knees, using her core strength, sliding past in a sitting position, narrowly avoiding the bash's attack. Li Jiang rushed toward Li Yan, immediately drawing his pistol, ready to shoot Li Yan. Li Yan swung forcefully. The blade flashed through the air. Gunshots rang out. A bullet grazed Li Yan's shoulder. His sleeve was shattered. Meanwhile, Li Jiangyun was struck hard in the shoulder by a thug's cleaver. The blade even penetrated 3 inches into the bone. It got stuck in his shoulder. Seeing the opportunity, Li Yan leaped forward. He made a tiger leap and charged straight toward Yu. He was ready to deal with him directly. Suddenly, he felt a cold wind behind him. In midair, Li Yan barely managed to twist his body. He tilted his body slightly with the help of his waist. He narrowly avoided the fatal blow. But still, the 8 serpents left a wound on his body. Enduring the excruciating pain, Li Yan turned once more. With a kick, he sent Li Jiangyu flying. He quickly drew out his handgun and fired several shots at Li Jiangyu. The bullets were all blocked by 8 Shi. 8 Shi's speed was incredibly quick and agile. In this cramped and narrow passage, Li Yan could only keep jumping and moving. He barely dodged the attacks of the 8 snakes. He waited for the right moment and fired a few shots at the snake heads, but it had no effect. Li Yan was startled. At this moment, he could no longer dodge. He could only grab the snake head with his hand to block it. The tremendous force slammed Li Yan into a small room nearby. Li Jiangyu watched as Li Yan took the full force of the 8 snakes' attack. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "You're fucking dead." At the same time, Zhu Di upstairs heard the noise from below. He quietly asked, "Could it be Li Yan?" Li kept tearing at the rope in Zhu Di's hand with his teeth, finally managing to bite a small hole in it. He spat the rope out of his mouth. He whispered, "It doesn't matter who comes. That strange snake can't kill itself. Having lived this long, I've never seen such a creature. It completely shatters my understanding of the world." At this moment, Zhu Di, now free, picked up the gun from the ground and widened his eyes. He shouted loudly, "Don't be foolish. Hurry, jump out the window. Tell the people on the street to call the police." Zhu Di skillfully unloaded the bullets from the gun, and dropped them on the ground. He took off his high heels. Turning to Li, he said, "This thing is useless against monsters, but it can hurt you." He glanced once more at the injured Li. He knew it wasn't the time to be sentimental. His eyes reddened as he said, "Take care of yourself." Li Yan's battle with Li Jiangyu finally reached a boiling point. 8 serpents coiled around Li Jiangyu, blocking the entrance completely. Black scales flowed like water. Li Yan took a combat stance, watching Li Jiangyu on the opposite side warily. The faucet behind her had been shattered by the previous strike. Cold water continuously hit Li Yan's back. Li Yan, however, seemed completely unaware, as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, with a swift movement, the snake's pale fangs lunged towards him. Li Yan twisted his left foot, powering his leg, dodging the snake's attack. Simultaneously, he forcefully kicked the snake's head with the heel of his foot. The impact made Li Yan's heart shake. It felt as if his foot had kicked a metal plate. He immediately switched to a kick and stomp. Using the force, he jumped above 8's snake. Li Jiangyu saw Li Yan jump over the snake's head again, fearing Li Yan would repeat the same trick. Without thinking, he ordered 8's snake to retreat. He protected himself. Meanwhile, Li Yan calmly observed the 8 snakes. His brain rapidly analyzed the situation. These strange snakes' fangs seemed to possess some special ability. No matter what, as long as they made contact, a piece would be swallowed. Their straight-line attacks were very fast, but they weren't very agile in turning. The farther I am from the director, the slower my speed becomes. The enlightened beast's eye is the eye of the enlightened beast, not its 8-tongued teeth. The powerful thing is only the teeth. If that's the case, how can I obtain tiger cubs? Without entering the tiger's lair, I figured out the key. Li Yan proactively moved forward. Li Zhang's heart stirred. She didn't unleash the 8 snakes to attack. Instead, she kept them circling protectively around her. The snake heads continuously pursued Li Yan's figure. Li Yan pushed her speed to the limit. She dodged the 8 snakes' attacks, constantly moving closer to Li Jiang, twisting the heart and bending the waist. Stepping on the bagua, Li Jiang suddenly saw a flash before his eyes. Li Yan had disappeared without a trace. Immediately after, a strong gust of wind blew from behind. Li Jiang lost sight of Li Yan. But the 8 snakes had no heads. The thunderous strike bit toward Li Yan's incoming punch. Li Yan did not retreat in the slightest. In his heart, a surge of anger grew. His bad temper intensified. His upper arm slightly lifted. His hand completely transformed into a palm. His forearm swung. According to the principles, how would this hand affect you? The tongue arrived with a roar. It suddenly bit down on Li Yan's right hand. Before the teeth could fully close, Li Yan's palm slid to the right, minimizing the contact between the teeth. Blood gushed out. Li Yan seemed oblivious. I flipped and bent backward. My left foot planted on the ground. My right toes were raised high. I kicked Li Jiangyu in the head. My foot precisely struck Li Jiangyu's temple. My foot landed squarely on Li Jiangyu's temple. Everything went black before my eyes. A large amount of blood spurted from his mouth and nose. The giant snake was struck like lightning. Its body went limp. It fell to the ground with the Li Jiang rain. Li Yan gasped for breath. His forehead drenched in sweat. The recent danger still left him shaken. At this moment, a system voice sounded. A fleeting glimpse. I remind you that the golden charm has been activated. Genyu activates it when facing potentially fatal harm. It will forcibly limit the injury to a level that won't cause immediate death. Then, it slowly recovers to 30% of the original injury level. Crippling injuries are not recoverable. At this moment, an elderly man with a refined appearance and a wise demeanor appears behind Li Jiangyu. A flash of golden light. Li Jiangyu, who had just received a fatal blow, stands up again. Dragging his injured body, he ran outside. Li Yan gritted his teeth and flipped himself up. He wanted to chase after them. He looked down at his right hand. His little finger and ring finger were missing. Blood was continuously flowing from the wound. He tore his clothes into strips and wrapped them around his right hand. Li Yan grimaced. She suddenly started laughing. The man's hearty laughter echoed through the entire apartment. Li Jiangyu looked back in terror. She shouted loudly, "Maniac! This person is a maniac!" Blood splattered onto the ground. Li Jiangyu desperately ran toward the upper floors. She knew there was still hope for her. The bodyguard's gun upstairs is still lying there. The battle between Li Yan and Li Jiangyu has finally reached its final stage. Just now, Li Yan delivered a fatal blow to Li Jiangyu at the cost of one of her hands. Luckily, Li Jiangyu has a life-saving skill. That's how she narrowly escaped. At this point, she has been frightened out of her wits by Li Yan's ferocity. She desperately runs towards the upstairs. He doesn't understand why he lost. He had all the advantages: timing, location, and people. A fleeting glance clearly showed that man was just a rookie. He had no inheritance at all. The only thing commendable was his 81% mastery in encouragement specialization. His only hope now was the dropped sidearm from the female bodyguard upstairs. Li Jiangyun suddenly pushed open the door. He surveyed the room. she discovered that Zhu Di was already gone. Li was somewhat dazed as she looked at the man. She didn't expect that this man could be beaten so badly. A dog-legged machete had pierced through his entire shoulder. His body was covered in blood. That strange snake was also gone. Liang Yu grabbed Li's collar. He shouted angrily, "Where is the Taoist? Where's your master?" Li stared at Li Jiangyu with a fierce look. She sneered and asked, "Where's your mother?" At this moment, Li Jiangyu, burning with rage, kicked Li's wound hard. She grabbed the gun from the ground and dragged the severely injured Li toward the door. Suddenly, a voice rang out. "In such a hurry, where are you running off to? Aren't you going to spend more time with your father?" Li Jiangyu was shocked in her heart. This was the last sound she wanted to hear. She immediately raised her pistol and aimed it at Li Yan. Li Yan didn't say a word. The dark muzzle of the gun pointed at the other. Suddenly, Li Jiangyu seemed to have figured something out. She loudly asked, "Yashiro, aren't you afraid? You can't be experiencing a volcanic eruption event for the first time. You're a dropout." Li Yan furrowed her brows. "What's a dropout? It seems this volcanic eruption is no simple matter." She glanced at the M1923 pistol in Li Jiangyu's hand. "You can't hold that gun steadily with your left hand, can you? Let go of that woman. How about we all throw our guns away to make things fair?" At that moment, as Li Jiang hesitated, Li's voice rang out, "Shoot." Her gun was empty. Li Yan reacted quickly. She immediately threw her gun. It turned out her gun was also empty. The snake's head quickly struck, but his hand holding the pistol clearly trembled. He looked incredibly weak. Before Li Jiangyu could react, Li Yan's fist was already before her eyes. A heavy blow sent Li Jiangyu flying. She felt the taste of death. Li Jiangyu steeled her heart. She couldn't care less. "Let's get through this first." System notification sounds. You initiated the detonation of the basilisk. The inheritance ability will go into a cooldown due to a stealth event. Your specialization is forcibly reduced by 10%. You triggered the detonation of your inheritance. You pay a huge price in exchange for a fatal blow. The basilisk lets out an enraged roar. Its snake body shatters into countless fragments. Li Jiangyu lunged at Li Yan. A black flash shot straight for Li Yan's forehead. The system voice sounded. "A fleeting glimpse. You have perceived your opponent's weakness. Your next attack, including but not limited to gunfire, weaponry, poison, and any other action that can harm your opponent,